Call the meeting to order. Catherine, if you would do roll call, but I do want to let you know that Rosado Segura is running a little late with the weather and traffic.
Trustee Baker.
Here.
Trustee Martinson.
Here.
Trustee Baldini.
Here.
Trustee Segura is absent. Trustee Rios.
Here.
Trustee Sandu is not present. Vice President Kyle Anderson.
Here.
And President Marianne Mancuso.
Here.
Thank you.
Here she is. And she's wondering where she's sitting.
And you can call her here.
You changed everything on.
Yeah. You're over there, Rosado. Over there.
Go ahead, sit by her.
Do I?
Say here.
Here.
Trustee Segura is present.
Okay. Now, you're all just going to have to be a little patient this evening with my first meeting, so it'll take me a minute to thumb through what's next. At this time, we will, the board will devote up to 15 minutes for comments to the Board of Trustees regarding closed session agenda items. Individuals will be limited to a 5-minute presentation. Are there any comments on closed session?
There are not.
Okay. Then we will adjourn to closed session.
Are you supposed to see what it was? What we're talking about?
I haven't had a chance to get her gavel training.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
That's all right. I'll just open it back up.
wasn't it hard enough? I didn't hit it
No,
hard
but
enough, or what?
We're going to close session 2, and then you list the items.
Oh,
Okay?
okay. Give me a second, guys. Huh? No, I've got it right here. All right, we will adjourn to closed session, conference with labor negotiations, public employment, and 4.3 pending litigation with legal counsel.
Oh, sure. Okay. I'll go get it.
Return back to open session. That got you to sit back down. Okay. Is everybody online on board docs and everybody's mics are lit up and ready to go?
Yes, ma'am.
See.
Okay. Everybody? Trustee Martinson, you're online? Ready to go? Okay, thank you. All right, great. All right. In closed session, reporting back on closed session, we hired 2 wonderful people, voted unanimous on both. The first is Chantel Ridgely, I'm told. That's how we pronounce it. Assistant Director, Child Development Center, beginning on February 12th. And Luis Alcazar, Associate Dean Mesa and STEM programs beginning on February 1st. And there is nothing else to report out of closed session. We will now do the Pledge of Allegiance, and Trustee Segura, lead the way.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will also adopt the agenda, but we are going to be removing, because the document was not prepared, are ready, which was number 14.12, Facilities Use Agreement for the Napa Silverados. So other than that, are there any other objections to adopting the agenda? Agenda adopted. And moving right along, we have a presentation starting with Doug Ernst, and then Doug, I believe you'll tell us about the rest of the folks who are going to talk to us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to this.
Well, Board, this is one of those fun things I get to do. We have heard from 4 elected leaders at the legislator breakfast the other day that career technical education is a big deal for this community. Federal, state, local folks told us the college is known for its creating jobs for its students. And today we have an example of that. The first person I'd like to introduce is the mechanical tool technology professor. His name is Stan Hitchcock, and I'd like him to come and talk to us about how he discovered a student.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, President Kraft, and staff members. It's really a pleasure to come before you and talk about the machine tool technology program here at Napa Valley College. I've been here since the fall of 2016, and it's been just an incredibly fun ride so far, and I really enjoy the interaction with the student. I'm getting great support from my boss, who's here tonight. I want to recognize Diana also. And anyway, it's been fun, but an especially bright spot in my program is Liz McPherson, who is sitting over here. Now, Liz, I inherited her in my 3rd semester class in machine tool technology, and learning her story, I became more and more fascinated about it, and that as a single mom, and I don't want to steal your thunder too much, but she came to Napa Valley College and kind of serendipitously ended up in the machine tool technology program. Kind of an unusual fit for her. But nonetheless, she excelled, and I recognize that, and also I have very, very good industry partners. Bob Payne is here from Shell Refinery Martinez also. Bob and Shell are big supporters of my program. Shell sits on my industry advisory board, and they are very interested in my program. They have a lot of faith in it, and they are one of the main recipients of my graduates. So I look at my program as bringing these students in and basically giving them the knowledge, skills, and education where they can go out and get the job experience, and he's on the output side of that, and he's been a very key player in the success of my program, and I talk him up in his program quite a bit in my travels. But getting back to Liz, so Liz became more and more interested in pursuing machine tool technology as a vocation, and Shell has an internship where they hire folks who graduate my program as on an interim basis, kind of as a touchy-feely program. Let's see how you work out and things, and then they hired them permanently. Well, I'm happy to announce that Liz went through that internship after graduation and was offered permanent employment with Shell. And now she enjoys making a very, very good living, working wage in industry and keeping the wheels of commerce turning. And I'm very, very proud of her. I know that Bob is very, very proud of her. And so I talk her up as much as I can, especially with females, that hey, there's a lot of interest, in this program for everyone. There's room for everyone in this program. So I'm very, very proud to have her. I'm proud to show her off tonight. And Doug, who are we going to have come up next and talk? I think I've said enough.
You did
a
okay. Very good job.
Very good. Thank you.
So basically, Bob Payne is here from Shell to say a few words about the internship. and how they wanted to keep her after her 9-week internship. Bob Payne.
Good evening, Madam President, board members. Thank you for having me here tonight. I want to first say thank you very much for having this program. So I've been struggling for many years to find a college that has the programs that we need to get great talent that we can help develop and give good jobs to. So I've been working for 12 years with several different colleges trying to find the right ones that have the right programs in place, that we can put a program together where we bring them in on an internship, we bring them in for 3 months. If we really like them and see good potential there, we hire them. And then we put them through more training on our site, and typically we expect long-term employment for that individual. Elizabeth is one of them talents that we think was a great find, and I have actually had quite a few other students from your program, and I'm looking forward to hiring a whole lot more from your program. So thank you very much, and please keep that program alive because it helps support us.
Any questions too?
So I met Liz May. She was about ready to graduate, and I asked her, well, what are you going to do about this internship? What are you going to do after your 9 weeks is up? And she said, they're going to fall in love with me and hire me full time. Let me introduce Liz McPherson.
Hello. I had a speech all prepared, but some people took my lines. So my name's Elizabeth McPherson. I go by Liz. I'm 28, Napa native. After 2 years of being a single stay-at-home mom, I decided that it would be a good idea to go back to school. And I actually ended up taking machine tool technology on accident. But I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the craft and the machinery. I loved what I did, and Shell came and offered me an internship. I also got a scholarship from them, and now I'm working for them full time. So thank you for having the machine tool technology program.
Thank you, Liz.
Any questions from the board? Great. Thank you, everybody.
I would like to just, no question, I don't have a question, but I just would like to recognize Liz one more time. And, the program, Stan, as well as our employer at Shell. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Bob. Thank you. And this is what we do, right? This is why we do and what we do, and it's so great. I mean, I was a single mom too, and I know it's not an easy road to go. So congratulations to you, because I know this is going to define everything you do moving forward. Congratulations to you. Okay. So, Raphael, I have a little gift for you here today, but I would like to say a few things, which are, first of all, thank you for your year. During a tough year, a lot of things came before the board that I think you handled in your normal, calm approach and balanced approach to everything. And I really appreciate your leadership and all that you did for us throughout that year. So do I want to have him come over here and hit him on the head with it?
I would think you should, yeah.
Oh, I thought this was a check presentation.
Come on over. You going to take a picture of us, Ron?
I am. It was my job to do that. Get in here, there we go. Smile looking nice, that's good. Perfect.
Can I use this tonight?
You can, yeah.
All right, so thank you, Raphael, and then I would just like to say a
Thank
few
you.
words, if I could, going into my year as chair, and I'm going to read it because I wrote some stuff down to make sure that I didn't forget anything. So looking forward to this year as president of the Board of Trustees, I'd like to take this opportunity to express some thoughts and expectations. I'm interested in providing leadership around the adoption of board goals, the collaboration needed to achieve student success, the continued commitment from the board to shared governance, and policy-level discussion and decisions. I would also like to ask for the board's commitment to respectful communications, collaboration, honoring the board by speaking with one voice for the common good, honoring the college president as our one employee and supporting his initiatives and success, follow appropriate protocol, and respect. Oh, I didn't realize it could make me scroll down here. And respect all lines of communication. And that's it. I'm looking forward to this year and everyone's input on anything we might do to improve our work. So now we will go to public comment. At this time, the board will devote a total of up to 15 minutes for comments to the Board of Trustees regarding any subject not appearing as an agenda item for this meeting, but over which the board has jurisdiction. The public may ask the board to place an item related to the business of the district on a future board agenda. No action or discussion will occur at this time on such items. Individuals will be limited to a 5-minute presentation. At this time, the board chair will poll those in attendance regarding the intent to speak on any item on the agenda. And I will just let you know that we are going to definitely be timing speaking. We've kind of in the past maybe let that run away a little bit from us. So Ron, I think you're going to time that for me?
Sure.
Thank
If
you
there's
very
anybody
much.
who's speaking.
Pardon me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we do have a couple of cards here in front of us. First of all, Arnold Koenig.
Hello, Madam President, Dr. Kraft, and the board. I'm a member of a group, Napa County Alliance for Senior Education. We were formed April the 15th, 2015. We meet every Tuesday in the library conference room, 1763 at 9:30 in the morning. Everybody is invited to attend our meetings. We deal with mainly senior issues. On your desks there in front of you is a flyer, and that flyer is of a meeting next Friday. Kyle was good enough to invite me to address the board. It's from 9 until 3. It's a multi-county meeting, mainly people from Napa, Sonoma, and Solano, a few people from Yolo County. And what we're doing is we are planning, June is Elder Abuse Awareness Month. We've given 2 symposiums out here at the college in the PAC Center, and we've also done a symposium on Alzheimer's too. So we're getting together multi-county to discuss ideas, collaboration, forming alliances, and working on senior issues. So I just wanted to invite everybody to our regular meetings, and it's amazing that a group of volunteers comes every week, same people. You couldn't pay people to come and attend meetings like we have, and I want to thank you, Dr. Kraft, very much for all of your support and the support of the college. It's a wonderful opportunity for people to give back to the college. I was taking classes 42 years ago out here. I remember that. So I want to thank you very, very much. At some point in time, we'll also discuss some of the proposals that we're putting together right now. I won't go into detail there because they're in progress. So be happy to keep you posted. So I'll be attending the board meetings on a regular basis and saying hi every now and then. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers for just general public? I know we have Leon wants to speak on an agenda item. Later. But that's, so, okay, great. We will move on to constituent group reports. And Happy New Year's to our constituent group. And we'll start with Amanda Badgett.
Good evening, Board. As the semester is still very, very young, I don't have a lengthy report. I would just like to mention how gratifying it was to attend Flex Day, and Marianne did so, and I believe Michael as well. And if I'm missing anyone else, my apologies. It was gratifying for me personally as to get to hear my colleagues, both part-time and full-time colleagues, share expertise, life experience, ideas about teaching and engaging students on a whole host of subjects. And it was a really great way to get inspired to go back into the classroom, which most faculty at this point have. And we have a very big, busy semester ahead of us. Among highlights are many significant hires, both in faculty and in administration, and we as a faculty are getting ready to serve on various selection committees, and this in addition to various policies and procedures that we are undergoing, various levels of review. And so it promises to be a very busy and I hope very productive semester. Thank you.
Thank you. And Administrative Confidential Senate Report, Ken Arnold.
Much like Amanda, it's just we're 2 days into the semester, so there's not a lot to report from our end, other than we have started off the semester. I do want to say leadership program continues developing. The first part of this year is going to be leadership sort of brown bag or / coffees for folks who have attended leadership training previously to sort of deal with other issues. We're getting ready to roll out. The leadership program will begin next semester. That'll be taught by people who are stepping in to replace myself. And by the way, if you see the leadership pins on folks, if you're a graduate of the leadership class, you're going to get a leadership pin, and that always distinguish the folks who have actually taken the class. If you're having pin envy, you got to take the class. So that's all I have.
Ken, I have to say, though, I didn't realize you were so great at stand-up. I mean, when I saw you,
I don't try to be funny.
I saw when you work in that stage the other day. I was surprised.
Yeah, I don't try. I try not to be funny. It just seems to be how my life goes.
Okay, so we have Associate Students of Napa Valley College report from Raphael, but he's not here just yet.
Yeah, so we haven't met yet this semester. We still have to pick our meeting time, but some things that we will be doing this semester is planning the graduation reception. We're looking into new furniture for the Student Activity Center in our office. And that's really about as much as we have right now. We haven't met yet, obviously, so more to come in the future.
Okay, thank you. Classified Association report, Jan Shart. Jan is not here. And Classified Senate report, Michael Rayford is not here. And Faculty Association report, Christy Iwamoto is here.
I am here. And like many of the other constituent groups, we've not had any meetings yet. No executive board meeting. That'll be on Monday, and our general meeting will be the second Thursday in February, so it's quite a while until our general meeting. I did want to note that we have a statewide union publication called The Advocate, which is the higher ed CTA branch publication, and that our own Merrick McKeague and his students were actually featured on the front page of that publication. It is available online over at ccaforme.org. And so if anyone wants to read about it, but he was featured very prominently, was gracious enough to give an interview to the social media person over at CCA, and we should all be very proud of him. Thank you.
Thank you. We have, and she's ready. I mean,
I'm ready.
She is
So I
just
have
ready.
a lot to report, actually. Like those
Napa
of you
Valley
don't.
College Foundation report and branch.
Okay, thank you. So actually, even since we met last time, we still have students trickling in who lost everything because of the fire. So we now have a total of 18 students that we've helped, anywhere from $50 to $500. And we've distributed over about $34,000 to them to help them out. We just completed a grant request to the California Community Colleges, which is a small support, but they're going to divide it by 5 schools, so we should get something from that too. We just did our annual appeal, and as of last week, we received $46,000. That's been a really good year for that. We had one major gift, a big gift from that too. And happy to announce that we've also, I just started a $10,000 endowed scholarship with the Napa Medical Alliance Group, and they're funding a couple scholarships for students in any health career. So we're excited about that, to manage their money. An anonymous donor notified me that he has left us an irrevocable trust, anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000. So we're working with him to get those documents in hand, and that's really nice. And now it's scholarship season, so we're encouraging all the students to apply for that. And Glenn is coming back to help us with that. And goes along with hiring an accounting firm and a bookkeeper, still in progress. Any questions? Yes?
Well, first, thank you for your work, especially with the fire relief fund. That's really wonderful.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, do we know when is the new MOU created yet with the college? Do we know anything about that?
We're continuing that for another, I think, a quarter or half a quarter. We found a bookkeeper. We're working on an accounting firm, so we need that before we can fully break away.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, President's Cabinet reports.
We'll just, Bob, let's start with Bob if you have something. Let's do that.
Yes, I do. So just a few items to report, all from the Business and Finance Office. First of all, the 18-19 planning and budget development process is continuing. We have a couple of deadlines coming up. On February 26th, unit plans are due at area councils, and then area councils will review those, and they're due to President's Cabinet on April 6th. I've also requested, we discussed this at the Audit and Finance Committee meeting last week, although the Audit and Finance Committee will be changing at tonight's meeting. So I'm requesting that we schedule a meeting of the Audit and Finance Committee in early February so that we can review 3 items. First of all, the potential refinancing of our Series C bonds. Our contract with our independent certified public accounting firm, this was the 3rd year of a 3-year commitment, but the proposal included the option to extend for 2 more years, and so that's what we need to discuss. And then our results of operations through 12/31 of 17, those will be coming to the full board at the February meeting, and so the Audit and Finance Committee reviewing that in advance of that full board meeting. There's one thing that I didn't include on the report that I do want to add, and that is that the Business and Finance Office and the HR Office are meeting on Monday to begin reviewing the position control module in the Ellucian Colleagues system to look toward implementing that to give us better control over the hiring of hourly employees. And that's my report.
Thank you.
Eric, sure. Vice President of Instruction.
Interim Vice President of Instruction. Good evening, Board of Trustees. So just a few quick things for you here tonight. As other constituent groups have reported, we did just get started back up here this week, and it was fantastic to see the faculty and the students show back up. So just a few things for you here tonight, and there is a document that's posted on the Board Docs website for you that you can refer to as well. So starting off with where we're at right now in terms of our enrollment and where we see ourselves at the moment. So as of this morning, and again, this was about 9 a.m. this morning, so these numbers could fluctuate a little bit. We had 15,360 enrollments. That is, and that's not students, that's enrollments. And so that means a student that has enrolled in a section. So 15,360 enrollments, 5,633 unique headcount, 743 course sections that we're offering. What that really translates to, though, and what we're really pleased to see right now is that represents a stable enrollment plus minus 1%, and in some areas actually some increased enrollment depending on what program it is that we're looking at. So that's a really favorable place for us to be in here today, and we do expect those numbers to go up because we still have our late start courses that will be starting up next week and actually even the week after that, and then we have a lot of courses where enrollment is by audition in our theater arts programs and other areas, or it's limited entry in some sort. So those numbers are going to continue going up. So we're really happy with where we're at right now and right on target with our projections for this coming semester. One area that we are looking at right now, so one of the things that we're working on hard at the moment is reviewing wait lists for courses right now to see if there's any areas where we might be able to offer more course sections to meet student demand. So we are reviewing all of that right now. My Dean of Instruction, Maria Villa-Gomez, and I are working with all of our academic deans across the board to identify some areas where we might be able to. We do have some limitations in terms of facilities actually being available to offer those additional sections, and staffing is always an issue in some of these key areas where we always have large student demand, including chemistry, math, English, and other disciplines like that that are common to a lot of different programs here on campus. So the other thing that I wanted to present to you number-wise tonight is just a little follow-up from last semester, because there had been questions and there was discussion about what the impact of the fire was going to be on student success last semester. We had a 2-week closure that was unprecedented in the history of the college during the middle of the semester. There was a lot of adjusting that had to happen when we came back from that. And I am really, really excited to report the numbers that I have here. Now, numbers are not stories, number is not a narrative, but these are really telling in terms of what actually happened and what some of the things that all of us working together collectively accomplished last semester. So we had 16,657 enrollments at the end of the term. Our retention rates. So retention, that is a student who was here at our census date, 4th week into the semester, and who received an evaluative symbol at the end. So they either passed or failed a course or received something at the end indicating that they were still there. We had a 90% retention rate, 90.3% retention rate. That means 90% of the students that were here at week 4 were here at the end of the semester. That in and of itself, even absent the other numbers, is extraordinary considering what happened and where we were in the middle. And then on top of that, that was actually an increase over the previous fall when there was no 2-week closure in the middle of it. So we had a 1.9% increase in our retention rates, which is just really quite extraordinary given where we were last semester. Successful course completion rates, that is the percentage of students that get a C or better in the course. That is, they pass the class. So on that one, we had a 74.1% successful course completion rate. And again, on that, we had an increase over the previous fall of 1.68% on that. And then finally, our fill rates, which is how many students enroll versus how many seats are available. We had an increase in that over the previous term too. All of those numbers tell a story to me. I obsess over numbers on an almost daily basis. It's an integral part of my job. But when I see that, what I see is all of the people that sit out here, your constituent group leaders, my fellow managers that are up here at the table with all of you. We really pulled this one off last semester, that we were able to respond to the student need when they came back, that the teachers were able to adjust for 2 weeks of closure in the middle of a term and still get students through successfully, that student affairs professionals, the administrators, the counseling faculty, all of the support staff were able to support the students in doing that's really extraordinary. I'm really, really happy to report these numbers here to you tonight because we really weren't sure what was going to happen after a closure like that. But this paints a really good picture on how everybody responded. And so I do want to make sure that I thank everybody that did the extraordinary work that we had to do at the end of last term. Faculty for having to continue to do that all the way up until finals and beyond in some cases, adapting, changing, and making sure that their students got what they needed. So thank you to everybody for that. And again, it's a testament to the people that all of you as a board have hired and the people that work here at the college. It's a phenomenal success, particularly given what happened last term. So thank you to everybody. So a tiny story here tonight about one of our programs. So Emergency Medical Services is one of our career education programs that's located in our health occupations. I had the wonderful pleasure of serving as the curriculum committee chair here at the college 10 years ago when the program was first being developed, when we got the initial grant, and I helped the dean and the faculty members that were working on that get that program implemented. Had a really interesting experience with that program this week. Earlier on in the week, on our Flex Day, our Instructional Excellence Day on Tuesday, we had a medical emergency here on campus during the middle of one of our division meetings. There were a lot of employees who were at that division meeting that responded to that medical emergency and saved somebody's life. And you'll hear a little bit more about that next month. One of the things that happened without those, that of course 911 was called in the middle of that, and you call 911 in a medical emergency, they send paramedics to the scene. The two paramedics who came to the scene were a graduate of our program and a current student in our EMS program who's finishing off his clinical rotations right now in our EMS program. He's enrolled in our EMS 310 course this semester. Those two paramedics who were trained here in our academic program then took that staff member to the ER here in town, and the attending physician in the ER is the medical director of our EMS program. It was this very, I mean, I've grown up here in the Valley. I'm from I'm from St. Helena, Angwin, really, if I'm honest about it. You know, everybody knows everybody around these parts, and even Napa, as much as it's grown, is still this very small town in many ways. And it was amazing to have this experience this last week, where that was true even in the middle of an emergency. So I just wanted to highlight that. You know, we have a very, very, very strong program in our emergency medical services. The director of the program, when I followed up with him yesterday, also let me know that all of the paramedics in the nearby fire station are also all graduates of our program. That they've gone through it, and I'm just really proud to work with all of the people that I work with, and really proud of what our students have done and the programs that our faculty have built. And amazing testament to that this week in saving one of our colleagues' lives. It was truly extraordinary. So just a quick preview, things that are coming to you. You're going to be seeing an MOU, I hope, this semester between us and our local K-12 partners, our districts, regarding dual enrollment. We'll be bringing also some information on guided pathways. It's a term that I would just want to keep saying every time I'm in front of you, because you're going to keep hearing it for the next few years. It's a very popular term, I should say, in our system right now. So we'll be bringing more information to you on guided pathways as we're moving forward with that as an institution. We'll be bringing some tenure track faculty hires to you later on this semester. And then finally, we'll have new and revised curriculum for you at every single board meeting as usual. And we anticipate some new programs coming through this coming spring that I'll be really excited to share with you and to propose to you for approval later on in the semester. And that concludes my report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. It's exciting to hear
Yes,
those
it is.
successes. It's really
A couple questions for Eric, I think, from the trustees. Trustee Baker.
First, I wanted to ask, is the enrollment headcount, does that include the community education, or is that just for credit programs?
So this is credit and non-credit. All the numbers that I'm showing you are the credit and non-credit courses. So community education we count separately from this, because those don't go into our state reporting numbers where we claim apportionment from the state, and it doesn't affect us in that way.
The other question I had was just about the fill rate. You said that, so 82.7%, that's representative of the students who wanted to get into a course and did?
Yes.
So does that mean that 17 and some change did not get the classes that they wanted?
Well, so that looks different depending on what area you're looking at. So a fill rate, let's imagine you have 20 seats available in a class. an 82% fill rate is 16 students enrolling for that course section where there's 20. That's an average across the entire college. There are many disciplines where that fill rate is 100%, 105%. We even have some 110% where people are kind of packed in at the beginning of the term. But that varies course to course, program to program. But that represents how many students enrolled versus how many total seats were available.
Two questions.
Trustee Martinson.
Oh, yeah. So with the 2018 enrollment data, so we used to always talk about full-time equivalent students, and now I'm seeing this term head count. So is that just the total number of students, both part-time and full-time, that are enrolled versus full-time equivalent students?
So head count is the total count of students, both full-time or part-time.
Okay.
Yeah. So one thing I will say, the full-time equivalent student number is usually something that we would report out at the end of the term, not at the beginning, because there's potential FTES and then there's actual FTES that we would generate based on what happens at the end.
Okay, and that's kind of related to the second question. So for the follow-up for fall 2017, do you happen to know offhand what the FTS was and where that was from 2016?
We have a meeting that's coming up in early February where we review that data, and we'll have an exact number at that point. We're still crunching all of the information on that, so that number becomes available usually a month or two after the conclusion of the term. So we have a group that includes the Dean of Jessica Erickson, that includes myself, Maria Villa-Gomez, and others, and Bob Parker, where we review that data and come up with that number. So that's something that we'll have available in a couple of weeks from now.
Okay,
for fall.
Thank you.
Others? Vice President Oscar DeHaro.
Well, first of all, I want to apologize for not having a report here for you this evening, but I just got back from 10 glorious days from the state to say Yucatan, and I'm still in the haze and the days, or perhaps both. But what I would like to say is that it's been very obvious that the students that we've seen the last day or so, having come on campus, and appear to be very, very happy and very pleased with the experience for the semester, and that's a result as well of the services that have been offered to them by our student affairs groups and services. But I also want to ask you to note two save the dates. April the 19th, we will have our 13th annual high school breakfast. Again, this is the event that we've had every year for 12 years. It's a program, it's a project that I started when I first arrived here. And so it's going to be on April the 19th, it's a Thursday. The other date is May the 24th. May the 24th is our commencement. And May 24th is a Thursday. As you know, in previous years, we have a commencement on Friday. This year, we're changing it to a Thursday to avoid any issues in terms of traffic and attendance as a result of Bottle Rock. So this year, we'll have commencement on Thursday, May 24th. And lastly, just want to share with you that on February the 10th, we will be the host site at the campus for a visit for the Mexican consulate in San Francisco. They will be here to offer and to provide documents to our Mexican citizens here in Napa County. So usually they expect about 400 people, and so we're pleased to be once again the site that they've chosen to provide that service. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. Public Information Officer Doug Ernst, please.
A couple of clippings just didn't make this report because they happened after the deadline, so to speak. And I just wanted to bring your attention to one of them, or two of them. One is the Association of Community College Trustees, the Washington, D.C. group that wrote an extensive story about this college and its service during the fire with photos. It's 4 or 5 pages. They sent that document to just about every college in the country. So you're famous for the work that you did for the evacuees, 780 over 8 days. Congratulations. That'll be in next month's report. The second one is, you may have seen ABC TV was here on campus and had a front page story in the Register about the FBI that was called in thanks to Chief Arnold He offered the college for a training place for the FBI to train our local law enforcement officers on how to stop a shooter, how to stop shooters. And it's just a tremendous achievement, I think, that the college was selected to do this training, a great service by this college to this community. Again, congratulations.
Thank you, Doug. And the standard clipping service is there, and it's a long one, but take a look at it if you'd like. I think just one thing on mine, I had just put either flyer is fine. I just save the date for board. We have this coming up, our 75th Founders Day Celebration Festival and Open House. It is April 14th, as you can see, 10 a.m. to 4 a.m. There'll be a lot of things going on. We have quite a list, and we'll be forwarding that out to you. Boy, everybody's stepping up for this 75th. Faculty, staff, a lot of tour of the facility, talking about what we do, looking at job training, etc. So it should be a really exciting time. It's happening out of Carolee Catalica's Office of Institutional Advancement, with a lot of folks kind of diving in, including the foundation. So that's all for our report tonight.
I'm looking forward to Chem Lab Kaboom.
Oh, yes, Chem Lab Kaboom, and that I don't know, either Eric or Amanda might address the Chem Lab Kaboom. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Forrest Quinlan will be involved.
Yeah.
That makes
It
sense.
almost is synonymous, Forrest Quinlan, with Chem Lab Kaboom, if you look it up.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's my report for this evening.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will approve the minutes, but before we do, I just want to read off real quick. There were some changes that were made. You probably saw some adjustments come through, notifications. One was on 11. It was Trustee Martinson made a motion, seconded by Trustee Baker, to amend the minutes. And that was the change. The yea votes were also changed. And then the second was 15.2. In the election of board officers, Trustee Martinson nominated Trustee Baldini, and the original one, I think, said Baker, and it was seconded by Trustee Sandu. And then the last were two corrections that I had, and they were just real simple. It said Academic Development Committee in American Canyon versus Economic. And there was another one, but I don't know where it went. I had another really simple one, but it's not on this list. But that's okay. So there were some changes that are already made, so the minutes should be pretty clean and ready to go. So without any...
So should that already be reflected here, or that gets changed later, or how does that work?
Some of them are reflected, or all of them reflected?
No. So it still, for item 11, anyway, it still says it's the same as before.
Okay, well, the ones that I read are the ones that will be adjusted, yes. So with those changes, if there are no objections, we'll approve the minutes? Okay, minutes approved. And then the special meeting minutes, I don't think there were any changes to that, were there, Catherine? Okay.
No, there were not.
So with no changes or objections to approving those minutes, we'll approve those minutes? Okay, great. We shall move on. All right, so we are at 12.1, and before we get the presentation, I believe that we have a speaker here, Leon Browning, which wishes to address the board on this agenda item.
Good evening. My name is Leon Browning. I'm a director and past president of the Napa County Taxpayers Association, and I'm the person who requested this agenda item. I also am the person who requested to have the after-action report done in 2015 after the lost 2014 bond election. I requested this agenda for several reasons. First, because it seemed to me that the Godby poll was a really important poll and item that should be discussed, and I couldn't see that the board was planning to put it up for public discussion. I mean, the poll occurred last summer, and here we are in January. By the way, members of the Napa County Taxpayers Association are major stakeholders. It's funny, we never see our name or any taxpayer organization when we see stakeholders mentioned by the college for what's happening. And we have attempted to meet with the facilities managers, but we've been ignored. We wanted to discuss the facilities master plan. A second reason I requested this meeting was because I detected what I thought was some questionable information coming from the college regarding the findings in the poll. Last September, there was a public information release from the college that said over 57% of respondents indicated potential support for a local bond. My concern is that nowhere in the Godby poll does it say that definitely yes votes of 57%. In fact, the range of definitely yes responses from their respondents is from 22.7 to 28.4. And so my concern is if the college is going to put out information about what respondents are saying, they should say that there was a definitely yes category and a probably yes category. So in the report, I detected 4 different charts, and they were indicating levels of support by respondents. So I want to summarize them because it's a lot of information. I found a range of 22.7% to 28.4% were definitely yes votes. And, you know, I have to remind you that a school bond election requires 55% approval rating by voters. So if you're getting definitely yes votes of 22 to 28%, it's not there. Then there's a range of 26.9 to 34.7 that would probably vote yes. And this gives a total range, if you add the two, which I wouldn't, but the college seems to be doing that, of 54% to 57%, right in the middle of where the voting has to come in. And interestingly enough, there's a range of people who would definitely vote no, and it's 16.8 to 26.9, and for each of the charts, it increased. So it seems like the more they came back to people, the more the definitely no answers were given. If you average these 4 charts, you get 26% will definitely vote yes. You get 30% that would probably vote yes, which is a 56% potential vote. And there's a 3.5% margin of error. So statistically, it's questionable. What is significant to me is that each time one of these charts is given, the definitely no vote continues to increase.
30 seconds, Liam.
Pardon me?
30 seconds. 30 seconds?
Okay. So in addition to these numbers, I'd like to refer you to the May 2014 poll by Fairbank Maslin, done for the 2014 election, bond election. Their definitely yes was 25%, just 1% lower. Their probably yes was the same at 30%. And all in all, very close results between the two, and the 2014 election failed. I have a lot more to say, but thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to speak on this item? I don't have any other cards, but yes.
Chair?
Is there?
Yes.
Are we allowed to extend time on this item if a motion is made?
I think you can motion to extend time.
To increase the speaker's time. Could a motion be made to do that?
I don't know.
We have 3 members of the Napa Valley County Taxpayers Association here. The 3 that are here are all past presidents or a current president of our association. My name is Jack Gray. I've been a member of the association since it was formed in 2010. So I've been at these meetings on your last bond measure, which we campaigned against, and we intend to campaign against the bond measure again if the college is going to decide to do a bond. Now, I realize that your college president has told the local newspaper you haven't made a decision yet. Well, then I asked the trustees, how did you approve over $60,000? I've lost the number. It may be $80,000 to do polling and to hire a consulting firm to help you pass a bond measure if you don't intend to do one. It appears to me that I realize at least on one of these measures, Amy voted against it. But I think all of the trustees should vote against expending any money for a bond measure that you don't intend to propose. We have, in fact, in your past minutes, a layout of the steps it takes to get to a bond measure. Unfortunately, those steps look much like the failed bond measure. So what I see, classic definition of crazy. You know, it's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. You've lost 2 bond measures. Do you really want to lose a third one? Because you haven't corrected some of the problems from the past ones. You do have a facilities master plan, which is a step ahead, but you need to have some concrete numbers for specific items, which I have not seen one building that has a cost estimate. You know, how you're going to construct that building. And you need those. I don't know how you come up to $280 million. But that number has been used as a target for this bond measure. Well, $280 million is enough to rebuild every building on this campus. If you look at what it costs to build the Archer Hotel downtown, on a square foot basis, you're going to find out how much you can get for $280 million, and you haven't got a cost estimate for one building yet. It's crazy. The other thing that's crazy is the trustees have voted money to promote a bond measure, to do the polling that you're going to hear about tonight. I and one of our other board members were polled. The questions asked included, should we repair roofs at the college? Well, we had that on the last 2 bond measures to repair roofs at the college. I had to couch every one of those answers on the follow-up questions with, that would not change my vote as a definite no to the bond measure. But I don't know how Godby's going to tell you that changed me from a no to a potential yes. we use some of the programs I know exist out here as, would you support a bond measure because we have this program, for example, for EMTs? He didn't say we have it. He said, would you support the college in the EMT program? Well, we have. What's that got to do with the $280 million new bond measure? So the polling you got is what you paid for. You paid, again, for a consultant to tell you what you want to know, what you desire to know, and not what you need to know. What you need to know is you got to get something specific that you're going to do with $280 million before you agree to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Raphael?
Good evening. My name is Rafael Monzo, and I am the president of the Associated Students of Napa Valley College. I'd like to just make a really brief, in my opinion, really simple comment on this item. I think that, well, in my opinion, I'd say that in my personal opinion, going out for a consultant before just even deciding to go out for a bond is not completely outrageous. To me, I feel a lot better this time around when it comes to the bond with when it comes to the topic of bonds, in that communication campus-wide. I mean, me at the student level, as the president of the student constituency, I feel way more included. And I was on student government the last several bonds that were attempted. I was involved in student government at the time. I was a senator. Now this is my first presidency, and from then to now I see an extraordinary change in terms of the communication here on campus among all of the constituent groups, including my own, the students, who often felt in the previous years that we were not as informed or not invited into the conversations as much, and I feel that completely different this time around. It's really pleasing to me and my board, my team. We like being included. Dr. Kraft has come to our meetings and presented to us there. We've gotten to ask him questions ourselves. So, I just want to say that I feel a lot more included this time around, and I think that the college wouldn't choose to go out for a bond if they knew they were going to lose. Not this time. I think that they might actually, that they wouldn't if the support wasn't there. If this survey, for example, if the data didn't show that they were going to pass, I don't think that they will go out for it. So I think that any panic that there may be about things already being decided or that the bond is going to happen, I think, should rest easy in that, the survey really just, it is getting us what we wanted, community feedback. And even here on campus, all of the communications that have gone out, I feel really included. I think a lot of the constituent groups on campus feel really included this time around, more than previously so, in the previous years. And I think that it's really it's the correct thing to do, to seek feedback from the community, to give them the opportunity to give that feedback. You don't want to miss it. If you have a chance to craft what a bond might be, like if we were going to go out for a bond, what would you want to be a part of it, and what would you not? Because that data is also welcome. What would you not want to be a part of the bond? All of that feedback is necessary and valid, I think. So my comment, it's simple, and I think I just thought I'd share that, is that where I am as the current constituent president for the students, I feel way more included. I know I'm repeating myself a lot, so thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I think we have one more speaker on this agenda item. Jill
Barwick.
What was that again?
Barwick.
Barwick.
Jill Barwick, yes.
Okay.
Yes, and good evening. I am Jill Barwick, and I am the current president of the Napa Valley Taxpayers Association. And if you let me begin by expressing my disappointment in the failure of Mr. Kraft and the board to respond to my letter inquiring into the source of the funds for the poll. Not even a phone call saying a response would be coming. I got nothing. Additionally, I received one of the phone calls and participated in this poll. I was dismayed at the questions being asked as they were so lopsided, misleading, and they're worded in such a way as to deceive the respondent, guaranteeing an affirmative response, rather than accomplish what I assumed the purpose of the poll was to be, was to determine whether voters would pass a new bond. Questions are more along the line of, do you support veterans, veterans education? I mean, that wasn't the actual question. I'm not quoting the question. But the questions were designed to elicit an emotional response, not responses based on fact. They had little to do with the bond measure or the actual purpose of a bond. What kind of polling is that? That doesn't help anybody. With questions which were misleading and deceptive, it puts into question the intent of the parties who are putting out the bond. At best, the questions in the poll were an attempt to frame the issues and advocate for the passage of a new bond measure and were not for informational purposes. The college cannot use public funds and services to advocate for the passage or defeat of a ballot or bond measure, which it appears the board is engaging in, political advocacy with taxpayer funds, and it needs to stop immediately.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the presentation?
I don't see our speaker yet, and he may be fighting traffic a little bit. So there's two options that you might do. We might do a because I want to make sure that we really talk about Mr. Gabi's not here, right? Yet I don't see a representative. No, that probably stuck. So we can either come back to the item, or you can take a recess for 10 minutes right now and hope that he shows, and we can go from there. But I really think we need the full presentation and the conversation about it, not to end it at this point.
Any thoughts, board? I would say we continue on and come back to it. What is everybody else? Is that kind of
Yes.
everybody's feeling? Okay, great. Well, then we'll go ahead and move on and come back to the item. And it appears somebody just walked in the door.
We can get
Perfect timing.
Hi, we were a little ahead, Brian, and we had decided actually pre your entrance to take a little break. But so we just had some, but we're not going to but we certainly could. What's our next item?
Are you prepared, or do you need some time, Brian?
Just need to get a folder out, and I'm ready to go.
And you're ready to go?
We're good.
Okay.
All right.
Well, we'll just, we'll give them a minute.
Okay. Catherine, can you put on relaxing music for a moment?
I have a question about the process. So unfortunately, Mr. Gabi didn't get to hear some of the feedback from the community on the survey, but after he presents, will there be an opportunity if the public, as well as the board, has any questions or any more comments to make?
There'll be an opportunity for the board to discuss.
Okay, but not for the community?
We have already taken all public comment up to that point.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. Pleased to be here this evening to present the data. Let me just get a little arranged here. Okay, so let's just dive right in. Oops.
And just make sure that you're speaking into the mic so that it goes
okay.
into the
Sure.
recording.
Sure, there you go. So to begin with, as we know, we conducted a survey for the college. The data collection was a little different than you had done in previous surveys because the world is changing in the survey research business. And the way it's changing is we've gone from just landline calls to landline and cell calls, actually some time ago, but more recently we've added email invitations and text invitations to the various voters in our likely voter universe to surveys that they would complete online or on a cell phone or a tablet, depending on their preference. And that way we're making sure we're reaching everybody potentially in our universe. In fact, the universe was the likely November 2018 voters in the college district. We were in the field from August 3rd through August 14th of last year, which is fairly typical. The survey on the phone was 20 minutes long. We don't know how long it is online because people can start, walk away, go have dinner, come back hours later, and finally hit the submit button. The total number of interviews that we completed were 771. In terms of the 4 different modes, that was 257 landline, 117 cell phones, 183 that were online from an email invitation, and 214 that were online from a text invitation. All of that leads to an error rate of plus or minus 3.5% for the entire sample. Excuse me. So let me. Moving on then to the, oops, it disappeared. There we go. Moving on to the key findings, the first question that is of import is the ballot question. So this was asked twice, and you'll see that as we go through here this evening. So this is a hypothetical ballot question that we're asking about education bond support. You can see the wording in the box on the right-hand side of the slide. We call this uninformed because there's been no other information in the context of the survey other than the words that you see in that box. Those words are based on state law, at least state law at the time, and that includes 75-word limit. We have to talk about the amount of the bond, et cetera. Some things have changed as of the end of last year, so we would probably do this slightly different, but it's substantially the same. Excuse me. The way we then ask this question is we ask, would you definitely vote yes, probably vote no, definitely vote no, or don't know, no answer, or not sure. But for feasibility purposes, the way we've been analyzing this same data for 30 years now is we add the definitely yes and the probably yes together, and that gives us a total of 56%. That's just above the 55% threshold needed to be successful in this kind of election environment. There is a margin of error, so it could be a little bit lower than that, could be a little bit higher than that, but that's a good place to start without a lot of information. If you compare that also to the 2014 survey that was done for the district, not by us, but by another consultant, we were at 55% yes. On election day in 2014, we were basically in round numbers at 54. So you see, all of this is about the same. But it's a good place to start, and we are a little higher than both of those other two numbers. Just to give you a little bit of depth in the data that was presented in our final report, you can see we break it down by gender. Here, men are a little bit more supportive at 59% and women at 53%. We also have it broken down by age, and here the 40 to 49s were the most supportive, the 50 to 64s were the least supportive. That's fairly typical throughout the state of California. The next set of questions that we asked were the priorities, and these are the top priorities, or at least they show the ranking of those priorities based on the respondents' opinions. What we did is we read this list, which you see some of them abbreviated here, in a random order, and then once we get the answers, we go back and do our data processing. We assign numeric values to each of the responses, so a much more likely gets a 2, a somewhat more likely gets a 1, a somewhat less likely gets a -1, and a much less likely gets a -2. That gives us a scale that ranges from -2 on the low end to a +2 on the high end. The reason we do this rather than just add percentages, which we can do also, is this shows the intensity of the priority from the respondent's point of view rather than just the percentages. For example, you could have something that is 40% much more likely and 20% somewhat more likely. That adds up to 60%. You could have something else that was 20% much more likely and 40% somewhat more likely. That also adds up to 60%. And so there's a big difference between those 60%, and I haven't even talked about the negative side of the equation, which is in this model as well. So this really gives you the intensity based on the actual responses, not just a gross look at the percentage, the total percentage on one side or the other. We also look at tiers, and those tiers represent things that are statistically tied. And while they may be numeric differences, they are grouped together and they are essentially the same. That difference from high to low in a tier is 0.2, and that's what you see reflected in these charts where we've added the lines showing the Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 here. In Tier 1, we have a variety of items that at the top of the list, and let me get the full wording for some of those because that's important as well. At the top of the list, we have upgrade computer labs and classrooms and instructional technology. You can see there's ellipses in there, and that's just designed to be able to get everything in one chart so you can get a sense of what the relationship between the various items are. Repair and upgrade vocational classrooms is second. Modernize and update science classrooms and labs, third. Provide new chemistry, physics, engineering, geology. You can see there's lots of science, STEM kinds of interest here in terms of the facilities that rank at the top of the list. And then we have update classrooms and educational facilities to meet current earthquake, fire, and safety codes, so kind of a health and safety bent. Those are the top items in Tier 1. Tier 1 starts at 65%. As you can see, when we go all the way down to the bottom of Tier 3, we're at 45%. Obviously, those things are not priorities for the voters. It is the things in Tier 1 that are the most important. We also have additional data based on some of the demographics. Again, you see gender here. There's a couple items that men rank higher, upgrade science labs and classrooms and instructional technology, and also modernize and update science labs. Everything else, basically, women prioritize at a higher level, which is not surprising when we're looking at educational issues. Again, by age, you can look at this data either by column or by row. If you're looking at it by row, it tells you which demographic group thinks that's the most important. When you look at it by column, you can find out what that demographic group thinks is the most important overall. So both ways are correct, but you get the sense of the richness of the data. The next set of questions looks very similar, at least in terms of the chart, to what we just looked at. This is informational items that are of greatest interest to the respondents. The methodology is similar in that we ask them, would you be much more likely to support this measure or somewhat more likely, or does it have no effect? But you'll notice there's no negative side of the equation. So we do the same thing mathematically and statistically, and create tiers the same way. The only thing is you can't compare these scores apples to apples with the previous question because the scale is different. But it still helps us know what the respondents' priorities are in terms of the information that's important to them. So at the top of this list, and again, there's ellipses in here which are designed so we can get everything on the chart so you can see the relationships. But at the top of the list, we have every penny from this measure will benefit Napa Valley Napa Valley College campuses and education centers be controlled locally and cannot be taken by the state. So there's a lot more, obviously, than what fits on the slide. Number 2 is the measure will help the college provide career technical education in fields such as welding, machine tool technology, and other trades. The third item is the measure will provide campus facilities that provide job training and specialized services for returning veterans. The fourth item is this measure requires citizens' oversight and yearly reports to the community to keep the college accountable for how the funds are spent. So obviously an accountability component that's important to the respondents. And then fifth, the measure will expand campus veteran services to assist veterans returning to civilian life. So those are the top 5. But there's a lot of things in the top tier. They range from 71% at the high end of our ranking down to 62%. All of those are substantially above the 55% threshold necessary to be successful for this kind of measure. Those were not the only items that we asked. There were a whole variety of others. These are at a lower tier, and you can see it continues Tier 1 at 65% into the mid-60s from where we started, and then Tier 2 goes down from there to the high 40s, which obviously is not above the 55% threshold. So the next question that we have shows the progression in that hypothetical educational bond measure and where we go from the initial test at 56.1, which I said was a good place to start, to 57.4. Statistically, they're about the same, but it is the direction that we would like to see after people get all of this information, what we'd spend the money on, as well as the additional details. And we'd like to see it go that way, obviously, because that suggests that the community is receptive to this kind of measure. This is exactly, again, the same wording, so we can compare that first and final test. Again, we have demographic information, and now that we've sort of flipped, the women are more supportive, right at 60%, and men are right at the 55% threshold necessary for a Prop 39 bond to be successful. In terms of the age groups, the 18 to 29-year-olds are the most supportive. The least supportive are the 30 to 39-year-olds. But we're also seeing support above 55% for the 40 to 49s and the 65 plus. The 50 to 64s are just at a little bit below the 55% threshold. We also have the data by city, and so here you can see how it breaks down across the county. Actually, of course, there's just a little bit in another county, so I should really say the counties, but that is just such a small part, it's really not statistically significant. American Canyon, we're at 67%, Calistoga, we're at 87%, Napa is the lowest at 52, I'm sorry. St. Helena is at 66, Yountville is at 76, and the unincorporated area is at 57. The final substantive question in the survey was a follow-up to the hypothetical bond measure question. And here what we're doing is asking them the reactions to different tax rates, not just the total gross bond amount. And this is asked in descending order, so we start at 25, then 22, then 20, then 15. If you go the other way, it just doesn't show you anything because nobody goes up. So what we're looking for is a tipping point, and you can see here as we go down and get closer to the $15 level, we get closer to the 55% threshold necessary to be successful. The rest of the survey really reports on the demographics. I'm happy to go through those, although it's deference to the board's calendar. The strategy for the sample to make sure it's representative is we start by looking at all the demographics in our likely universe, and we create a stratified cluster sample that matches those demographics. On the back end, then we weight to those same demographics, so it's representative of the universe. So everything that's in here basically is the voter file for the likely November 2018 voters. So there's nothing unusual about it. It's who we expect to vote. What may be unusual to some of you who haven't seen this kind of data before, the number of children in the household is relatively low, and that's because these are voters. Voters are typically older, so there aren't 18 or younger children in the household. Social media is going up, not surprising. Gender is always a little bit more female than male in the likely voter universe. Age, and this underscores the point about the children in the household, 37% of the likely voters are 65 plus. So while they may be parents, they're not parents of school-aged children anymore. There's another 30% in the 50 to 64 age group, so you're looking at 67% of the voters that are over 50. That, again, is typical for this kind of election in California. I could go on if you want, or we could just, to the board's preference.
I think it was great information. Would we like to go through the rest of the information, or do we have enough information? I mean, we've seen this. Most of us have seen this information, so we can, I think, go to discussion and take some questions. And but I think the depth of the information was great. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay. So, Trustee Martinson.
Yeah, as far as the demographics, I was wondering if you could talk about what you were looking for in the voting history and how that relates to strategy.
What we do when we pick a universe, obviously we sit down with our clients and say, you know, what elections are available to you from state law. Prop 39 limits your elections that you can actually put on the ballot to those that are regularly scheduled. So that usually means June and November of even years. From there, we do an algorithm that is based on a couple things. It's not just the 3 of 5 kind of scenario. We have literally 25 years of election data. And so what we do is we look at when you registered to vote, and how many elections you had available. And so conceivably somebody who registered 20 years ago had lots of elections, so we want to see lots of election behavior. But somebody who registered to vote, in this case in 2016, in, let's say, January, and voted in both the primary and the general, even though those are presidential elections, but that's all they had available to them, they would be included in this, whereas some other people might have 4 or 5 elections that they need to have participated in to be included. So it's a little bit of a sliding scale based on the registration date.
So from that, did you draw any conclusions related to the bond measure and Napa Valley College based on what you looked at?
Well, yeah, so based on that sample, which is what we believe the turnout to be, and we've been pretty close across time, even with some of the dilations that we've seen in the presidential election years in the last 2 or 3 times out. The data that we talked about in terms of those hypothetical bond elections, that's within the error rate and what we expected. So we're right at that 56, 57% with a 3.5% error rate.
I just had one more question. Okay. So I was wondering about the bond language. One of the topics, it says that the bond money would be used to improve veteran services. And I didn't think that bond money could be used for services. I thought it had to be for construction. So is the implication that if veterans get a new center, that will improve services?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. The longer answer, and I don't know if you have counsel here, legal counsel, but what they would tell you is that the full text of your measure is going to be pages and pages long. That will appear in the voter handbook. This, by definition, because it's limited to 75 words, is only a summary. So it's the best summary of what you're intending to do. Obviously, yes, you can't spend bond money on services, but you can create facilities to provide those services.
Okay. Trustee Baker.
I'm just curious as to your opinion on something, actually. You expect more turnout in a presidential election. November 2018 is not going to be one. However, given our current political climate, are people in your line of work expecting a higher turnout?
That's a great question. The answer is yes and maybe. The yes answer applies to June for sure. And I saw a survey literally right before I came over here nationwide that says the Democratic Party is looking forward to the election more than the Republican Party is. And it's a 10-point shift of where it was leading into the presidential election 2 years ago. So that's huge. And when you ask people about their political philosophy within the two parties, the liberal end of the Democratic Party is even more enthusiastic about this next election, and the conservative wing of the Republican Party is the least enthusiastic. So that's on the national front. The thing that's the no part of the answer is that in the primary, we have a gubernatorial election that's very hotly contested. Obviously, there was a debate over the weekend. But because of California state law, which no longer says pick one from column A and one from column B for the November, top two vote getters are Gavin Newsom and Antonio Villaraigosa, we could have two Democrats. Just like we did in the U.S. Senate race in 2016, facing off in the general election, and what we saw in the now that's at the top of the ticket. In 2016, we obviously had a Democrat and Republican running for president, so the turnout was what we would have thought. But the people that didn't vote in the U.S. Senate race and then returned to vote in the congressional race is the first time we've ever seen that dip. What we have never seen before is if we do have two Democrats running for governor in November, what is that going to do to Republican turnout? Nobody really knows. We all have some guesses from the Senate race. There were obviously some Republicans that voted but didn't vote in the Senate race. So with the gubernatorial race being at the top of the ticket, are those same kinds of people just not going to show up? We don't really have an answer for that.
And then age. In some presidential elections, as we might think might happen this year, is that there could be a younger voter turnout, stronger turnout. And so how would that change?
Yeah, typically in California, and I think it's true here as well, what we saw is millennials didn't vote quite as much as some thought or hoped they would, and they're the ones, some of the voters that are particularly engaged, yet again, because they didn't think it didn't turn out the way they thought it was going to turn out and that they thought they could take a pass. So younger voters are probably part of that group of people that I mentioned in the Democratic side of the spectrum that are looking forward to the next election, sort of to play catch up, maybe.
Okay. Anyone else? Michael, any questions?
On the questions themselves, these were ID'd, or was this phishing, if you will, as far as what was provide facilities to prepare students to transfer? Those were provided by...
Those are all items that we provided. There are no open-ended questions. That's the other kind where we say, what's most important to you? And then we just listen. So we wanted to make sure that we got people to respond to all of the things that are on your potential facilities list. So we got an idea of what the voters' priority is, so we know what's important to them and what's not important to them.
Thank you.
I have one more question, if anybody else doesn't.
Let me see what the rest of the board has. Kyle, do you have anything? I don't have anything at the moment. Rosa, Rafael?
Well, I don't have a direct question at this point. I'm kind of trying to digest all of this, and I have to say that I'm still considering this, given the numbers that this shows, that we're at that 56% and not much different than the last time around. So in this whole process we're going through, I think it's necessary to find out whether the community, in fact, wants to improve the facilities here and exactly what the priorities would be. But I am still, exploring this and waiting to receive the additional information that we're working through our process that we're using before we decide whether we will go out for the bond or not.
So it's kind of comment/question. Before you came, one of the maybe two speakers mentioned the risk of combining the definitely yes with the probably yes and calling that support. My concern with that was when you look after all the information is provided about the bond, the total number of those combined numbers does increase, but there's a shift at where there's a decrease from definitely yes to probably yes. And at the same token, in terms of the probably no and definitely no, that increases with more information. The undecided stayed exactly the same with more information. So to me, there's just a concern that when they get more information, even though overall it might look good at first glance, really there was a shift away from definitely yes to probably yes, and an increase from probably no to definitely no.
Different pollsters have different methodologies, and it's important to sort of put that in the context of what each methodology or each pollster has done historically, and how that's turned out on election day. Historically, we have always added the two of them together. And the reason, or our rationale for that is there is no probably yes on the ballot. You're either yes or no. And so the same thing is true with the probably no's. And what we've found for over 30 years now is that you can do that and be predictive of what happens in election day, and that if we were to take the 34%, 35% in round numbers away, we would be dramatically underestimating the support for this measure. And that we've literally put hundreds of measures on the ballot, and we've been successful in 95% of them. Hundreds of measures worth tens of billions of dollars. So that's our methodology. Now, others have another category called leaners, and what those are is they take the 11.6% and say, are you leaning yes or are you leaning no? Now, we don't do that because, well, I think that if we were asking a question about who you're going to vote for president, the leaners make sense because somebody's not going to go to the polls on a presidential election and not vote. So that's useful information. But when you get this far down the ballot, what happens is those pushing the undecided and saying leaning one way or another overinflates the yes and the no. And we don't do that because we think that those people have a third option, and that is to not vote. And in fact, when you look at the actual ballots cast and the number of votes on every issue, the further you get down a presidential ballot or a gubernatorial ballot, the smaller the number is on measures like this. So that's where we would agree that you'd be overinflating and overestimating the support if you were to push those undecideds into a lean camp. But the probably yes and the definitely yes, we're really comfortable with using that as a combined yes vote.
What about, though, from your experience, seeing that with more information, that there's a shift within those there's two statistics, a shift away from probably yes or definitely yes to probably yes?
I mean, the difference between the two is certainly not the way we'd want to see it go. Because obviously we're trying to get to a yes, but the 25.4 and the 22.7, statistically speaking, there's absolutely no difference between those. The same is true for the 30.7 and 34.7, because you've got a 3.5% error rate on the overall of the survey, but when you look at an individual category, that error rate goes up, and you have to remember it doubles. So let's just say the cuff that the error rate becomes about 7% when you're just looking at the probable yeses. So you'd need to see a 14-point difference from one to the next for it to be statistically significant. And obviously, we're talking about a 4-point difference. So I think it's statistically insignificant.
Is there another survey in our near future? What are the next steps that make sense?
Yeah, what most of our clients do is they'll do a preliminary survey to sort of say, yeah, should we move forward with this process and spend the time and effort and resources? And this suggests that the answer is yes. And then usually as close as we can get to the actual election, but before the board has to vote to put a measure on the ballot, we do a tracking survey to find out, have these numbers changed? Are they higher? Are they lower? One of the trustees, Trustee Rios, said, at 57, he's not sure. That would help answer those sorts of questions one way or the other for the board. And we would typically, the deadline for the board to make a decision is the first Friday following the first Monday in August. Now, your board meetings may back it up from there, but we would want to try to be in the field as close to that board meeting as possible to still get you data in advance of it.
I have one question. On the renter to owner rate, and why were we pulling renters?
Well, everybody gets to vote.
Yeah, but
And renters show up at the polls too. It's true that this ultimately is a property tax and they don't pay it, but they get to vote. This is not a Prop 218 measure where only property owners vote. That's a different kind of election proceeding. It's not technically an election. It's a property owner ballot, but this is not that kind of election. So those people can vote and do.
Thank you.
And I think, to be clear, I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything to this, but these are all the steps that we need to be taking for this board. At this part, we are not advocating. We are not saying no to it. We are hoping to gather the type of information that will help us to make that decision when that time comes. So does anybody else on the board feel like there's something that would push you one way or the other, or are you feeling let's just continue this direction and continue gathering this information?
I think it's a very important issue that would greatly benefit what we do and what we saw previously as to the type of education and programs that we offer and the caliber of students that we are producing. I think we should go forward with this.
Continue with this process of gathering more data and making sure that this is what the community will also support.
And that the community will benefit from this whole bond issue, so.
Let me give others opportunity if they have.
I think it's useful information, obviously. It's also great hearing from the public. Thanks, Jack and Leon and Jill, for coming in. And I think there's someone else that wants to speak. I don't know if it's on this issue from the public. I think there's nothing at this point that's going to push me over one way or another if we were to call on it tonight. So I think it's good to continue forward and have this information because it is a big decision. So.
Manveer,
I'd say the college is better off having a bond than not having a bond. And in that aspect, it makes sense to go out for one. As long as money is spent on what we say it's going to be spent on, I'd like to see it go through. And with the way some of our science classes are packed, my biology class is almost 50 people in it. It's massive. It would be nice to see a class with maybe 30 people in those very packed classes, and going out for a bond would help that. So that's my comment.
Okay.
Let's definitely continue the conversation and explore the options available to us. And certainly the documents presented allows, if in any event, more focus on what the need is, to identify that and make sure we communicate it. But that is a decision is far off until we join the conversation and listen to the different groups.
I did.
Hold on 1 second. Trustee Baker, okay.
Go ahead.
I was just curious, you mentioned doing a follow-up survey closer to making a decision. Do you change the language of the survey, or is it identical?
Well, it's always better to be as close to the language as possible, because then we have a really good time series. Having said that, we've learned information from this survey, and so one of the things we would look at is the bullet list here and make sure that this matches the voters' priorities at this. But it's not just the survey, that's also your master planning process too, is refining what your needs are. So we do have to balance those two factors, and that usually winds up the ballot question changing a little bit.
I think I echo, I'm not sure if it was Leon, Jack, or Jill that mentioned, I think at some point the board, you get enough information, so at some point we probably would want to draw the line on how much we were going to spend on surveys and probably just make the decision one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah,
Something
can I weigh
new?
in too? Yeah.
Okay.
So kind of piggyback on what Kyle just said, since the board already allocated money to do surveys, and I know the one for the college constituencies is already in effect, so of course I think that would be really important to see that data. But in terms of the community data, I personally feel it's too close, and my interest would be that, I agree with Manveer, a bond would benefit the college. However, I would want to know that it was going to pass. We've talked about it before, that a third failure would really be devastating in terms of passing a future bond. And I think it's an unfair legacy to lead the next president. I would only want to pursue it if it was very clear that it was going to pass. And if not, I would want to wait and continue to build trust and confidence and get input in terms of what people want to see happen here at the college and help ensure that one actually passes.
Yeah, I think that's maybe a little bit further down the road, but right now, I think the conversation is we want to keep getting this information and we want to keep gaining our knowledge on what possibly could take place or what might happen. So do you have anything to
No, I think it's, I appreciate that the conversation. And so I think the next, what I hear as staff and for us is now for us to engage in the next piece of the feasibility, which is go out to the community, talk with all the stakeholders, including the taxpayers groups. There's 3 or 4 of them in the county. We'll talk with each of them. And my guess is that we'll also speak with, teachers and everyone else. So now it's time to do that. So over the period of the next 3 months or so, we'll be doing just exactly that and report that back to the board for updates.
Yeah, and I do think I'm going to go with what Raphael said as well, is that I do believe that the inclusiveness in this process has been much greater than it was the last time, which I think will make a big difference. So, Mr. Hinton, hang on just 1 second. So, I think we're good. Thank you. Anything else that you?
Not for me.
No.
Trustee Mancuso, Chair, can I just make just one really quick point before Mr. Hinton speaks?
I think we'll move on.
Okay, well, we need to have a motion to end discussion. I just would like to make one last point. It's an important topic. I don't think we should rush it.
Action to make on this one. There's
Right,
no
but
vote
it's our
on
chance
this.
to discuss it, and I just would like to make one last point, please.
Okay.
I want to honor what Ms. Barwick said about just as we move forward and continue to get information from the community, board's role is oversight. And I just want to make sure that we do follow the law in terms of not advocating for the bond and instead stay focused on gathering information from the community.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Hinton, so typically what you want to do is before the presentation, so right as the agenda item comes up, that's when we typically will, welcome speakers on a particular agenda item. So if you have something brief, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Most of the time you give the presentation so that we can receive the presentation before we give you our feedback. So it's hard for us when you don't even have a copy of it. You could have put a copy of it next to your agenda, and then we could be a little more prepared to give you data. But it's easier as a community member for us to receive the data first, then tell you what you feel. That's how they do it at all the other school boards, city councils, board of supervisors in the greater Bay Area. So I think, I'll go back to 3.5 years ago. I attended a debate over there for two of you that are up there, and there was a preliminary debate featuring Mr. Brawning over here about the school bond, and I heard a lot of the points he made tonight back then. But spending $60,000 of survey, to $60,000 of tax money for this survey to get 771 results, that works out to about $80 a phone call. That's a little steep, I think. And it sounds like it was more of a asking, what's your favorite pickup line? Asking people, hey, what's the best thing you'd want to hear if we wanted to sell you something, for $280 million. And going through your data, it would be nice if we could see the complete sentences and have the full results of the data so we know what the whole question was. And I would also say that maybe such a small sample, some of the data could have been cherry-picked, targeting, like we heard, apartment renters that are more likely to support something if it doesn't have a financial impact to them. And when you look at the price, if you continue forward with more surveys, I hope you might go with a different firm. This person wasn't even here on time today. It's a lot of money, like I said, and they're not even here on time to hear what the community is saying about their survey. And I would bet that me, Jack, and Leon, for $30,000, could poll 300 people each and bring you back 900 results of what the community thinks about this data you have here.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Mm-hmm. If I was on Board Docs and I went in through the website and I went on Board Docs, could I find this agenda item with this attached survey?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Okay, so we will wrap up this item on the agenda. And thank you, Mr. Gopi, for your presentation.
Thank you.
And we will move on to the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I just want to pull 13.3.
Okay. Pulling 13.3.
I have on the financial documents, I have a exclusion, or I'd like to recuse myself from a particular check number. And that check number is 0300005 to Dub Sports. And with that, I move approval of the consent calendar with that exception on my...
Is there a second?
Second.
Bob, I just saw your face.
I'm sorry, I
There's
just wanted to
something.
say that the financial documents are not part of the consent calendar.
Consent calendar, that's right.
Jumping ahead, there it is, 14.3.
That's under action items.
All right, we'll save it then.
Okay.
But I strike that. I'll go ahead.
Thank you for that
Approval
catch.
of the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, so that's Baldini moved to approve the consent calendar, and Trustee Rios second. All in favor?
Is that without my item?
That is without 13.3. So that's approving 13.2 as well as 13.4. All in favor?
Do we have electronic voting?
Oh, do we?
Nope.
Not on consent calendar.
Aye.
By consensus.
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
Okay. That was unanimous? Aye? All right. Consent calendar, so is approved. Do we move 13.3, or do we take that up now?
Take it.
It's been moved to become item 14.1.
Okay. All right, so we move to action items, and 14.1, which was formerly known as 13.3.
That's right.
And Trustee Martinson, what is your concern on that item?
I just wanted to draw the board's attention that very late an addendum was added to the HR document, because probably most people didn't see that when they were preparing for the meeting. So just want to draw that to the board's attention.
That what happened?
That an addendum to the HR document was added and uploaded pretty late, so people probably didn't see it.
And what was the addendum?
Cameron Kraft was taken off the personnel document.
Oh, okay. Apparently that was an error. I don't think it was yeah.
Sure. Since we're talking about it, yes, his name was listed in error and removed on purpose.
Okay, so
Electronic voting is not available since it was consent.
oh, okay.
So
So
I
on
couldn't
that
switch
one, it's not okay. All right. So
Move approval?
Baldini moves. Iverson second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Moving right along to action items. 14.1, fall curriculum changes. Oh, that's right. It's going to be 14.2.
Same difference.
If you refresh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I will do that. Thank you. Okay.
We do have electronic voting on this.
I'm sorry, what was that?
We do have electronic voting available on this one.
Okay, great.
I move approval.
We need a motion on 14, now 14.1.
I move approval for 14.2.
Rios and Iverson.
Okay, so we have a motion by Trustee Rios and second by Trustee Iverson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, we got electronic.
You did a Rafael Rios there.
Yes.
Are you wanting to take it electronically?
Yes, and we need Trustee Iverson's vote.
I just did it.
Oh, okay, it carries unanimously.
Perfect.
Thank you. 14.3, approval of the 2017-19 Integrated Plan, Basic Skills Initiative, Student Equity and Student Success and Support required by Chancellor's Office. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Segura moves, and Iverson second.
Is there going to be a presentation on the student equity plan?
There's a presentation, but if you have questions, we have two members from the steering committee here. And we have Mr. Willis and Dr. Alamo.
Okay, it seems it's very important, so in the past we've
So we
had a
move?
presentation.
Okay, so we move, we had a second, and any discussion, which would include any questions that might be asked of somebody who can answer them. Do you have a question?
Who am I asking?
I'm not
Ask
sure
me,
who you're saying.
and we have
Oscar.
two members of the committee as well, so.
Okay.
Mr. Alamo,
Let's
Craig Alamo and Howard
welcome-
Willis.
Further discussion on the item.
I guess if you have a specific question, you should ask, but
Okay.
if it's to present the entire plan, I don't think that was.
Usually highlights maybe of the plan.
So we
That's-
welcome
anyway.
Mr. Willis and Mr. Alamo.
Mr. Chair, if you had it, did you look at it
I did.
before? So do you want to see a presentation, or do you have specific questions from when you read it earlier?
Well, again, it's an important plan, and I've heard of boards that actually do pre-board workshops or special meetings just on this plan. It's that significant. So, and usually we've at least had a presentation, and then we can ask questions and have discussion. So I just was expecting that, because that's what we're used to. So.
So we did.
But if we're doing things
move a
differently,
second.
then I'll just ask questions, I guess. Is that
Go
how we're
ahead and
doing
ask,
it?
yes, go ahead and ask your question.
Or actually, I guess it's more a comment. The first part, which is kind of looking at last year's plan, I guess my concern first initially was that when there's discussion about progress and accomplishments from last year, it's not really based on outcomes and data. It's more just describing activities that took place. And so at first I had a concern about that just we're not separating out this idea of outcomes versus the activities, which are the method to achieve those outcomes. I felt a little more encouraged when I went down in the document and it talked about future plans, and it said that in the future that the goals must be outcome-based. So that's good, that's a part of the future plan. But then on page 13, the first two goals are outcome-based, but then goals 3 through 5 are, again, activity-based. So then that made me concerned again. So anyway, I just want to just kind of generally make a point that I hope that is the future plan, is to move towards, again, looking at, when we talk about goals, looking at what are our outcomes. So we're talking about things like, improving course completion rates, improving transfer rates, graduation rates, and so forth. And then the activities are the method in terms of how we're going to achieve those outcomes, and just keeping those really clear.
Mr. Chair, just for future reference as we move forward in this new year, if it's a question, is it going to be a question, or is it going to be
This was a
an opinion?
comment.
Just curious.
This is a comment. I always had questions leading up to the comment, but since we don't have presenters, I just thought I would go in straight with my comments.
So is there a question or is there a response to the comment?
Yeah, I guess, we're approving this tonight, so we can't do anything about what was done last year, but in terms of looking ahead and the future goals, if we accept this tonight, goes in stone, or is there still opportunities to, for example, the 5 goals to make them all outcome-based, or is this kind of set in stone if we approve this tonight?
Again, there's a plan, it's a 2-year plan, and the expectation is that there's flexibility in making the modifications as are deemed necessary by the institution. So your comment is something that can modify, that can be adjusted. But currently we have this deadline of the end of this month to submit it and approved. And so, given your comments and your notes, we can look at those modifications, make it more clear for you.
Thank you.
May I ask a quick comment or ask a quick question? I'm confused now, which is which. So is this is a required report, correct?
That's correct.
And this meets the requirements?
That is correct.
But there is, apparent from your last comment, there is potential for improvement as we go
Absolutely,
along.
without question.
Thank you.
Board, may I just add a
Yes.
comment? May I? Okay. And just to furthermore to add that this is a integrated plan. There's still 3 separate plans that have goals and outcomes that have been vetted and went through the process already. We needed to combine 5 goals that are across those plans. And so we're still required by law, because it's legislative plans, to meet our other goals and objectives within the separate plans. So it's really extensive, but the California community colleges, as you know, are moving more towards integrated services. And so this was an integrated and very thorough process. And I do want to thank the committee members, thank the faculty. I mean, there was a lot of involvement in this process. But just to answer your question.
Thank you. And I appreciate what you said, Mr. Daharo, about that you're open to feedback. So yeah, so that's my general feedback. And then in terms of the 5 goals, like for example, there was no goal on increasing graduation and transfer rates. I mean, that's what we're here for. Seems like it should always be an outcome that we're looking for. So anyway, but I appreciate your feedback, and I'm sure it was a lot of work combining those plans, and so thank you for your hard work on it.
Okay. Any other board member need any additional information on that? If not, I'll look for a motion to...
Chair?
You got a first and second.
Oh, we already did.
Call for it.
Chair?
Excuse me, who was the second?
I have a question.
Excuse me, 1 second. Yes.
What is an early alert system? It's under integrated goal number 5.
What is what? I'm sorry.
An early alert system?
Sure. That is a system that will help identify some of the academic challenges of students at a much earlier rate, so that we can provide proactive efforts to support them, whether it's getting them into tutoring or success centers earlier. We get feedback, work directly with faculty. So our goal, going back to the comment about the graduation piece, the outcomes, that is what the system will do, but it requires very close work with our faculty who are in the classroom. And so part of that is developing a work group with faculty about and looking at various early alert systems, which we have, throughout other California community colleges that we'll be looking at. So that's our plan.
Actually, I thought I read somewhere, did LGBTQ students get added to the list of students that had to be addressed in the student equity plan? Because I thought I read that somewhere and I didn't see that here.
Not as of yet, or at least not that I'm aware of. What the Chancellor's Office did start to provide to the California community colleges were numbers from the application process, which is something that we have not had reported back to us before.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have who made the motion and second?
I do not have the second.
Okay. I think I lost.
I thought there was a second, because I moved to approve.
You moved to approve. So Segura, and then it was Iverson, right? So Segura made the motion, and Iverson second.
Okay. Online voting has been opened.
Thank you both for information.
The vote is unanimous. Vote carries. The motion carries.
Thank you. We have a huge list of action items here to go through, so I would like to suggest that we take a 10-minute break. All right.
Gavel. And just
Gavel.
recess.
Recess.
There you go. Go ahead.
All right, we'll return back to session. And I believe we were on 14.6, no.
4.
14.4. Ratify financial documents.
Move approval.
Mr. Baldini, was this the one you wanted to take something out of?
Yes, but I'll do it on my vote.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Baldini moves, and Rio second. All in favor, or, I'm sorry, it's electronic, isn't it?
Electronic voting is open. The vote was unanimous and motion carries.
With the exception of.
Was there an abstention?
I'm sorry, yes, with the exception of Trustee Baldini, who has recused himself from this vote.
From check number.
Do I have to?
Yes.
From check number 0300 005, Dubs Sports.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you. Okay. And that moves us to 14.5. Community College Chancellor's Office Annual Financial 2016-2017 Budget Report, 311 report. And it looks like Mr. Parker has something to tell us.
Well, I just wanted to call your attention to a couple of things. This is a fairly comprehensive report. Our quarterly 311s really only focus on the general fund unrestricted. This is all funds. It's also where we report not only results of operations for the fiscal year that just ended, but also the budget for the new fiscal year. It's also where we report or indicate that we are in compliance with the 50% law. And the 50% law says that you must spend at least 50% of your general fund unrestricted dollars on instructional activities. And so we are absolutely in compliance. We always have been. We're just a little over 50% right now. And I just want to remind you that instructional activity only refers to what happens in the classroom. And so counseling services are not considered instructional activity. If a faculty member has reassigned time in order to do program coordination, that is not considered instructional activity. And so it is strictly what happens in the classroom. And so we do continue to monitor this throughout the year to make sure that we remain in compliance with the 50% law. And I will say that most schools up and down the state are not much more than 50% in compliance with the 50% law. So it's not an area, it shouldn't be an area of concern that we are at just a little above 50%. The other thing I want to bring your attention to is that at the end of the fiscal year, we maintained a fund balance that allows us to maintain the percentages that we targeted and the amount of fund balance that we have budgeted going forward for 17-18, 18-19, and 19-20 in our 3-year projections.
What happens if we miss the 50% law?
Well, you can petition for an exemption from the 50% law.
But we don't lose funds from it if we were to miss it. I mean, we're not missing it, but...
We could be penalized.
Okay.
I'm not aware of anyone being penalized recently. We could be penalized. I don't see that we would fall below 50%. We just need to make sure that we are categorizing things properly, that we are making good use, because it's only our general fund unrestricted money. So to the extent that we can use categorical funds and other funding sources to pay for some of those non-instructional activities, that allows us to maintain in compliance or remain in compliance with the 50% law.
Right. Okay. Did you have something? Trustee Baker.
I was curious, on page 33, it shows that there was a deficiency of revenue. I don't know if that becomes over or under expenditures of 1.8 million. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So first of all, we had budgeted to use, the board had set aside ending balance reserves to fund certain activities like increases in PERS and STIRS contribution rates, a certain amount of money that was set aside for institutional technology improvements. And so in addition, this is a snapshot in time. And so since this report was finalized, there have been some adjustments to our property tax revenue, which increased our property tax revenue over actually close to $600,000. And so overall, even though this report shows that 1.9, it was in compliance with what you had budgeted and what we had budgeted for the year.
Trustee Martinson.
I just had two questions. So, so you said you were able to maintain the reserve that we planned. So is that 12% or?
It's actually, if you look at the 3-year projections for 17-18, it's at approximately 14%. If you remember from the 3-year projections, it's the same dollar amount for all 3 years, so it's about $5.7 million. In 17-18, that represents 14%. In 18-19 and 19-20, it dips to 13%, but that's because while the dollar amount remains the same, the general fund expenditures increase. And when you did set a 15% reserve goal as a 6-year goal, and we are still tracking to be able to achieve that within the next 5 years.
And my other question, I remember a couple years back, there was a statistic mentioned that right now the community is supporting the college maybe like 85%. And I found some numbers in here, and I thought it looked like now it's like 74%. And I don't know if that's like what you said with the difference in the property taxes that at this time versus later, or can you talk about that, where I would find that statistic, or if I'm correct?
Well, so I'm not sure how you calculated that statistic. We do actually see more community support today than we had 2 or 3 years ago. And if you look at local revenue as opposed to state revenue, you should see, if you're comparing year to year, that local revenue continues to increase, offset by decreases in state revenue. And that's that shift from being an apportionment district to being a community-funded district.
So in this document, should I be able to calculate that? Because I thought I did, but I'm not sure if I did it correctly. Should I be able to do that with this data?
You should be able to do that. The one thing, you would have to look at this document from previous years to see where we were last year, the year before, and compare that to what this document shows for the current year.
It's actually on page 33, the same page that Trustee Baker referenced. That was the data I used. I'm not sure if that was accurate, but where it has the totals, the actual, and it says there's the total revenue, and then within that there's the local revenue. So total revenue is 45 million, local is 33 million. So I used that to calculate 74%. Would that be accurate?
That would certainly be accurate based on, well, when you say 45 million, so what you're looking at is the total including the restricted subfund, which is Fund 12, correct? So you're saying 45 million versus local revenue of 33 million. The thing that changes that calculation is the fact that if you look at restricted subfund 12, the lion's share of that money comes from state revenues. And what you see in restricted subfund 12 are things like our student equity money, our SSSP money, any grant money that might come in from the state. So that restricted, we tend to focus when we look at community, and when we talk about us being community supported, the state only looks at unrestricted subfund 12. They're not looking at restricted subfund. Mm-hmm. Unrestricted subfund 11, I'm sorry, not restricted subfund 12.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
We had a motion and a second. Did you get both of those?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll move.
Second.
Move for approval. Trustee
Second.
Baldini, second.
Iverson, Baldini. Iverson moved, Baldini second.
I just have one question. For those in the audience, can we put a dollar sign in the total columns?
I wish we could. This is a state form, and so we don't have any control over what it looks like.
All right. Yeah, they don't look at dollars, right?
No.
So. Very good. Yes.
I was confused. I was like, I'm assuming.
No, I mean, someone picking it up out in the world.
Iverson, Baldini, and we're ready to vote.
Yes.
Online voting is opened. That was a unanimous vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. All right. So we are now to the very exciting portion of this meeting, which is the district audit report.
Well, it's exciting to me. So, but I don't get out much. So I just wanted to recognize Maria Biddenbach, who is the co-chair of the Planning and Budget Committee, is here tonight. Thank you, Maria, for being here.
Hey, thank you, Maria.
Also, Joe Latunsky would love to be here because he'd rather be here than being sick at home.
Oh, no.
But so our controller is not able to join us here tonight. But we have with us tonight, representing CWDL CPAs, are Stephen Curry, who's in the back of the room, and John Dominguez, who will be presenting the results, presenting the audit report. This is information that was presented to the Audit and Finance Committee at their meeting last Thursday. There are 3 reports, the district audit report and 2 component units of the district, and that's the District Auxiliary Services Foundation and the Viticulture and Winery Technology Foundation. And so I will ask John Dominguez to come up and share the results.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. So yeah, as mentioned, we just wanted to point out a little bit of the highlights that were shared with the Audit and Finance Committee. We had a chance to go into detail on each one of these reports, and some members of that committee felt it would be helpful to come before the full board, so we're here to share that with you. Feel free to stop me at any point, but I did want to just jump right into the district audit report and point out that on page 1, if anyone's following along, and this is the document, page 1, is a good little synopsis of the responsibilities of management as it relates to these financial statements, and then us as auditors and our responsibility. So some good general information there. But essentially, management is responsible for the preparation and presentation of the financials, and we as auditors are responsible for opining on the accuracy of that financial information provided to us. So if we look to page 2, we're rendering our opinion there. This is our independent auditor's report on the financials. And so what we're issuing here is an unmodified opinion, a little different terminology from several years back where we were using the unqualified term. Unmodified has the same connotation, which means that when management gave us the financial information that comprises this report and we tested that, we confirmed it to be accurate and complete. The disclosures that were presented meet all the necessary requirements. So that's a positive opinion on the financial statements that we've rendered there. On page 10 of the report is a good summary in the management discussion and analysis section that touches on the economic factors impacting the future. And so as you are aware, the state budget was released and information that's going to impact the district. This is some forward looking information, some highlights of the state economy, and then also some elements that'll impact the district. And I apologize, that was on document page 10. So no problem. But overall, a good management discussion and analysis section, some information that summarizes all the core financial data. For the casual reader of the financials, I think they can glean some very useful information here. On document page 12, we jump right into the core financial statements. And this is information on the statement of net position, so assets and liabilities of the district. And we had some lengthy discussions on recent changes past several years. As you may recall, we brought on the net pension liability as a result of GASB 68. That continues to be a big topic of discussion for districts and governmental entities throughout the state because of its significance and its impact on the financials. So you see here under our non-current liabilities that net pension liability has gone up to $36.6 million, and that's an increase of about $7 million from where we were at in the prior year. And again, just to further emphasize, this is information coming from the CalPERS and the CalSTRS systems, so their actuaries are producing reports on an annual basis, their auditors are producing reports on an annual basis, and we're simply taking information from those reports and applying Napa Valley College's proportionate share of these various elements and reporting it here. So it's very significant and it's very volatile, and we just continue to bring that up, to make readers of the financials aware that it's ever changing and significant. And as we move into the notes, we'll touch on that volatility a little bit, just so you have some perspective there. One of the things that did come up in the meeting with the Audit and Finance Committee was the negative net position, as I mentioned in that meeting, is kind of a new norm as a result of these GASB 68 in particular, the pension-related items. I did have a chance to look up just randomly a handful of other community college districts in the state, and I won't point out names as they're not overly significant, but a comparable district in the southern part of the state had a negative net position of $93 million, a negative unrestricted net position of $95 million, and that compared to salary and benefits of $133 million. So when we looked at that, another example, not too far away, a little smaller district, negative net position of $4 million, negative unrestricted of 26, salaries and benefits of 33. So when we're comparing, as it was asked in the Audit and Finance Committee, what are other districts looking like? My response then was, I think, Napa Valley College is in a similar or even a, upper tier position when it comes to this perspective. And again, the only other relevant information that we shared in that was that as it comes to rating agencies or borrowing, should that occur at any point in the future, the rating agencies are factoring all of this in, and it's not negatively impacting any district individually. They're being compared to their peers, again, where you'd be viewed positively, in my opinion. So just some general information there. Any questions on the core financials before I just move into some highlights on the notes to the financial statements? Okay. Just a few highlights on page 31, a good summary on the capital asset activity of the district. We see the land that's still held, site and improvements, buildings and improvements, furniture and equipment, just some generalized information along with depreciation expense. On the following page, 32, is a summary of the long-term obligations of the district, so the GO bonds, the premium that related with those, compensated absences, so the vacation accrual that would be owed to employees, and then the other post-employment benefits, the health and welfare and other items along those lines. And then the following pages, which I won't go into, have detail on each one of those, so we can see the individual bonds by series as they were issued, bonds. But some good general information on the large GASB 35 as we would characterize these type of activities. So these are items you're not typically seeing all throughout the year when you're looking at individual funds. These are conversion entries in our world, so they're brought on to bring the financials into the compliance with GASB 35 full accrual statements. On page 40, we have a good summary on the GASB 68 pension-related items, and we have that broken down by plan type. So you see CalSTRS and CalPERS broken out, and then those totals would tie back to that statement of net position that we started on. And you can see very significant liabilities and related deferred outflows and inflows of resources. And on page 44, we see a good example of that volatility that I mentioned. So right now, as we saw in that previous chart, the CalPERS net pension liability currently stands at $18.2 million. Should they miss funding estimates as projected by their actuaries by 1%, we would see a jump in that liability all the way from 18.2 to 27.1. Should they exceed that earnings estimate by 1%, you can see it decreases down to 10.7. And I think this is significant just so that if we're here next year and we have, a completely different set of numbers we're presenting to you, this is exactly why. That the actuaries would say when you look at a 10-year average of the market, it's probably fairly smooth, but at any one point in time, annual, 12-month rolling average could be pretty volatile. And so that's what we'll see. We'll take that information as required by each of the systems, and we'll report that proportionate share for the district. I was going to jump ahead to page 66, which is a summary of the state compliance procedures that are mandated by the Community College Chancellor's Office. And so, as I'm sure you're aware, they issue the Contracted District Audit Manual each year, which specifies really detailed procedures that we as auditors are required to perform over each of these areas. So as an example, an area, the state general apportionment is a very significant one. There's probably 50 or more specific steps we have to perform. Compliance is very black and white, so anytime there's an instance of non-compliance, we're going to report that to you. And we do have one state compliance finding that we identified this year. That's displayed on page 70. In my opinion, not a significant finding, but is one, as I mentioned, we bring to your attention nonetheless. And that was simply the filing of the 311 that was presented to you. Under California law is due by October 10th to be certified of each year. And the district needed a little bit more time beyond that to ensure the accuracy and the completeness of those numbers, and so they took that additional time. Ultimately, what was provided to us was accurate and complete, but did technically get certified late. And so again, compliance, very black and white. We became aware of that, so we're reporting it to you. And then on the following page 71, we did have a finding last year on, as it was historically, the concurrent enrollment, now the new terminology, dual enrollment. But there was a finding in that area that was fully corrected and implemented by districts, so we were pleased to see that that was corrected. So those were kind of the highlights I wanted to touch on in the district report. Any questions on procedures, results, anything related to the district audit?
I think, yeah. Oh. So, yes, I think that outside the audit committee, if there's anybody else that needs any clarification on anything on this report, the audit committee, does recommend and, thoroughly had a good discussion with John and with Bob as well. But definitely, if anybody has any questions, Kyle?
I just had a question on the closure during the fire, and where did that have any effects on it, and where would they be in the report?
That's not, we're looking at year ending June 2017. Mm-hmm.
Any other clarifying questions for John Mix?
I have a comment.
Yes.
I see why the student trustee doesn't have an actual vote now.
Okay.
All right. And I don't know what your preference is for the District Auxiliary Services Foundation or the Viticulture Report, but I wasn't going to go page by page just simply to point out some highlights, or if you have a preference to do otherwise, I'm happy to.
You just pick whichever one you want to do first, and we're here to listen.
Sure. So I'll just maybe point out that in the District Auxiliary Services Foundation, we did render an unmodified opinion on the financials. And, while we're in there, it's such exciting information. We spend so much time auditing it. Let's just take a look. But on page 3 of that report, we'll see that statement of financial position. And so we had a chance to go through and verify each of the cash balances, and sorry, that's on page 3 of the document there. There we go. So when we're, auditing cash and cash equivalents, we're verifying the balances that are held with the county treasury, balances that are held in individual bank statements, auditing the receivables number to see those figures. And everything was accurate and complete. We did have a chance to do a detailed internal control walkthrough with the cafe. They moved on to a new accounting system. We had a chance to observe their closing process, to see how they're handling cash, how they're making the deposit. We felt that they had a good, strong control environment, and even beyond that had room for improvement. So we did have 2 recommendations that we shared in detail with the Audit and Finance Committee, but those were simply just some minor improvements on that control environment that were implemented immediately by staff. So very strong, I think, controls surrounding all of the district entities, including this foundation. So very positive results from that audit, and that's something we'll continue to do. I think the cash handling, the closing, and the deposit process is a key one for those cafe operations, which are significant to this entity. Okay. On the Viticulture and Winery Technology Foundation, good results again. As we look at, again, on page 3 of this report, we're on that statement of financial position. We felt that the VWT Foundation has a strong financial position, good asset balances as compared to their operational needs, which is a positive thing. And we did have one minor adjustment this year, and that was to the way they were valuing their inventory. That's a requirement under the reporting standards of this entity. And so we worked with them to make sure that the inventory value as it is analyzed for bulk sales, for wholesale wines, and for retail sales was accurate and reflective of revenue that is reasonable to be generated. And so they did make a change to that inventory valuation that's reflected in the footnotes and on the subsequent page. But we think overall a very positive improvement on the way they're valuing that. So a very good thing. And other than that, I didn't have anything to touch on for the foundations, but would be happy to answer any questions again on results or procedures or anything that relates to the audit and the opinions we've rendered.
Thank you. Is there anybody outside of the audit committee that has any clarifying questions?
I do have one actual question.
Mm-hmm.
What is a bad debt expense?
So a bad debt expense would be uncollectible account. So if you've sold, in this case, wine to a local retailer who, for whatever reason, is not going to pay, when you write that uncollectible receivable off, it's an expense on that statement.
We had that same question. That was a good question.
That happened in this. Is that what happened here? Or?
Yeah, that's not uncommon for district and related entity operations. So the district maintains a bad debt expense as well for generally its student receivables that for whatever reason remain uncollectible at a certain point in time.
Thank you.
You're welcome
All right. Looks like we're good.
Question,
wait a minute.
and probably more to Mr. Parker regarding procedure on grape sales. Would that be reported in the farm accounts, or is that now part of viticulture?
That's now a part of viticulture. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we will look for a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Baldini move to approve, and Iverson second.
Just have a quick question. Are we approving or accepting?
Accepting.
The motion is to accept.
Accept.
The committee's.
Online voting is open.
Chair, can I ask a question while the vote's going on, just about the audit? As a student trustee, when I read this next time, what should I be focusing on and to get out of this? So for the next student trustee.
Balanced budget.
I think that's an auditor accountant question.
It's a big question.
That's a big question, so maybe that's a little kind of workshop or meeting sort of thing.
That'd be good for next year, for the next guy.
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
person.
Oh, wait, John's gonna come to the rescue.
I was summoned, I think there was a motion.
Okay.
To come up, but from an auditor perspective, from a CPA, obviously the financial stability of an entity is of significance to us. It's something we're analyzing. So those core financial statements is something I would be looking at. What changes are you seeing year over year? And you'll see that in the management discussion and analysis. We'll give you trends. So last year this was asset balances, and now it's gone to this, figure. So I'm looking at, changes year over year, and then overall financial, position in that statement of net position is a key perspective for me.
I just have one thing to add. I think for me, having been on the audit committee for a while, is that knowing that what your findings match up with, what we're reporting. So that makes me feel, I think that makes me feel really good that, knowing that because really all the data that you pour through.
Yeah, and we shared obviously in more detail in that committee meeting what procedures we're performing over each of the balances. But on that net position, for example, we kind of walk through and categorize what we look at, what independent sources of information we obtain to, confirm and render our opinion. So you're absolutely right.
Thank you. All right. Results?
Trustee Segura has not voted.
What's going on?
The motion carries with a unanimous vote.
Okay, we go to 14.7, non-resident tuition. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Baldini makes the motion and Segura seconds.
I have a question.
Any discussion? Yes.
I just had a question. I'm wondering, are we required to raise the tuition to at least the state standard or the state average?
And so the answer is no, we're not required to. And in fact, we could, based on our numbers of the cost of education here at Napa Valley College, we could actually be above the state average. As you can see if you look at this, the average cost per FTES for the district is $268, but the statewide average is $258. So we could set our non-resident tuition at $268. We wouldn't necessarily have to increase our non-resident tuition. We have, however, historically tried to maintain consistent non-resident tuition with our neighboring colleges. And so in the past, and it's also true for this coming year, both Santa Rosa Junior College and Solano College are going with the statewide average. And so we're not trying to compete with them. We're also not trying to price ourselves out of the non-resident tuition market. So that's why the three of us have historically remained at that statewide average.
How many non-resident students do we have? And say we were to make the non-resident tuition the same as an in-state resident tuition, how much money would we lose, and is it significant?
It would be significant because, first of all, and it's kind of semantics, but the state doesn't refer to what residents pay as tuition. The state refers to it as an enrollment fee. And so all resident students pay a $46 per unit enrollment fee. Non-resident students pay that $46 per unit enrollment fee, and in addition to that, they pay the, in this case, it would be going up to $258 per unit as a non-resident. The state mandates that we charge something in addition to the $46 per unit for non-resident students. And the main reason for that is that residents are supporting, or at least in theory, residents are supporting the fact that tuition or enrollment fees are only $4 to $6 per unit through their property taxes, through their state income taxes, through all of those sources that provide funding for California community colleges. So the idea is if you are not a resident of the state of California, then you are not making that contribution through property taxes or state income taxes. Therefore, you're being asked to pay the cost of education that resident students are paying in theory through their tax dollars.
Would it be fair to assume a student would rather come to Napa if we had a lower cost than Santa Rosa or Solano? Why do we have to have a similar cost to what they have?
Well, I think that, and now I'm getting into an area that is probably better addressed by the two VPs on the other side of the room, but it's my understanding that students really make that choice based on proximity and programs at those institutions and not necessarily by the cost. And so if we were to be below our two neighbors, we might bring in some additional students, but it would not necessarily be beneficial to us in the dollars that we would lose in non-resident tuition probably would not be offset by the additional non-resident students that we attract.
One last point to that. Non-tuition costs are greater than tuition costs. If there was an additional student, they would buy more textbooks than if they went somewhere else. Would that possibly offset the difference and make us more money, possibly?
That's a difficult question to answer. It would depend on what classes they're enrolled in, what the cost of those books are, how they get those books. Do they buy them from our local bookstore? Do they buy them through some other source? Are they buying used books or renting books versus actually buying books outright? That would be a difficult analysis to do, and based on the number of non-resident students that we currently have, it probably would not be worth that analysis. As we see increases in non-resident students, it would certainly be something that we can take a look at.
Chair, can I ask one last question to one of the VPs?
As long as we're not stretching too far off of the approval of this particular report?
Well, it's about how many non-resident students do we have, and
okay.
Yes, at last count for the fall semester, we had approximately 168, which approximately 20 to 25 are the international students that come from other parts of the world.
I would like us to look into how much money would we lose, and since we save about 13%, you said? 13 to 15 in reserves, that we save that money?
So we're required, going back to reserves, we're required by the state to maintain a 5% reserve. The board had set a goal, a minimum of a 12% reserve. We're currently at 14, we'll be at 13 next year, but the board has also established a long-term goal of a 15% reserve.
In the future, I would like us to look into why does it need to be that high or would we lose so much money if it's only a few, like about 100 students roughly? And since we have so much saved, if we could put that in, and I'd like to believe that if the cost is lower for them per unit, they'd rather come here. Like if we made it $100 or $50, so there would be $46 and then another $46. Would they rather come here instead of Santa Rosa or Solano, which is all like within 30, 40 miles from each other?
Okay.
And I would want to know, why is it $258? Is that a economically set number, or is that just
It's a state average.
It's a state average, but why is it set? Why is it set at that specific number?
State average. Yeah, I support the recommendation.
It's certainly something that can be looked into, just to bring that data back and give a comparison of what it would do based on the numbers that we're currently getting in non-resident tuitions. Okay.
We have
We have a motion and a second.
by Segura and Baldini,
Yes.
and online voting is now open.
Since my online voting does not work, I vote no.
The motion carries with 7 yes and 1 no.
Thank you. Okay, and I believe we're going to pull 14.8 because we are not prepared to discuss that this evening.
Oh, we missed 14.7.
No, we didn't.
Oh, we didn't.
No, that was non-resident tuition.
Oh, never mind. It got reordered. Okay.
Yes. So we're going to pull that, and we move to 14.9, board goals. And I hope everybody's had an opportunity to review these. I think that they look great. They match up well with our planning, with our strategic planning. And I would like to see a motion to approve the 5 Board of Trustee goals that we have listed here.
So moved.
Second.
Baker, motion to approve, and Iverson, second. Any discussion?
I think we put a lot of time into these at our workshop, so
Well, these
I
are
think we
actually
did a good job.
they're actually different than the ones that we came up with the workshop, which I'm fine with because that was kind of rushed at the very end. That we came up with, I think, 3 goals at the very end that aren't these. But I like that these ones are tied to the strategic plan. I like that. I like that there's only a few goals. That's nice. I just was going to suggest just one minor language change. Twice we have foster a climate, and I think that's appropriate for the second one. Foster a climate engages MVC students and assists in their progress. But for the 5th, I was thinking maybe providing leadership to enhance collaboration between MVC and community and civic partners, rather than, again, foster a climate, which is kind of vague. So that was just one suggestion, just a little stronger for number 5, providing leadership to enhance collaboration between MVC and community and civic partners. So that was one suggestion. And then apart from that, I'm just wondering, I think we need to model this idea of having measurable goals or having some kind of evaluation tool, a rubric, so that at the end of the year we can evaluate ourselves. And so I'm hoping that after these are approved, that perhaps there could be a subcommittee. I know a lot of educators, so does Trustee Baker, and we're educators. Maybe we could help develop, either turn these into SMART goals or develop a rubric, some kind of evaluation tool, so at the end of 2 years we can actually evaluate these goals. Otherwise, they don't mean anything if we can't evaluate them.
I think that at our oversight level, I don't think that that's where we are. What do other trustees, I just don't see that being us.
What? Being able to measure our goals or evaluate our goals at the end of 2 years?
It would be very difficult for us to say, monitor and ensure fiscal stability of NVC as it transitions to community-supported district, other than the results of, our goal is to monitor it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, our goal isn't necessarily, help me.
Right, but what does that look like?
It's not.
What does that look like if we're monitoring fiscal stability, and how do we know at the end whether or not we did that? Yeah, some kind of like a rubric in terms of what does that look like if we're monitoring fiscal stability MVC. What does that look like? And maybe it's something as simple as that we have our our plan, like our budget, where we said what the reserve should be and so forth. We have our budgetary values, but we need to know what that looks like if we're doing that at the end of 2 years. So I think we should be a model for that.
What we did this evening and what we do with our audit committee, okay, is our monitoring. That is our result, to be able to say we have monitored it and we know what the information is, and not necessarily that we would have responsibility over that outcome, but that we have monitored it, and that by presenting and approving an audit report,
that's an example.
We have met that goal.
That's example, and that's what I'm talking about for each of these. That would be an example of evidence that we've monitored, that we've accepted a clean audit report at the end of the year. So that would be an example. So I would like to see us do that for all of these goals, actually describe what that would look like if we were doing these things, like create a rubric.
Trustee Iverson?
I think it's reflective of the success of the district and how we would, foster, monitor, oversee. I mean, if the district is not up to the standards, then that would be how we would be gauging it. I don't know if we need to. I just feel like we've worked on these quite a bit.
I'm not saying we don't accept the goals. I'm saying that then we take it one step further and do what we say the college should do, which is make them measurable or create a rubric or some kind of evaluation tool so that they're meaningful. And at the end of 2 years, we can actually evaluate whether or not we accomplish these goals.
Trustee Baker.
I was going to say that I understand what's being said about not micromanaging, and I 100% agree, but I also agree with what Amy's saying in terms of codifying our processes and saying, okay, this is our goal, and what the audit committee does is an example of how we achieve that goal. So just basically writing that down so that we can point to it. I think that's a good example, and I think it could be worthwhile to at least have that discussion, maybe in a subcommittee or something. And I would also, if the board agrees, be willing to modify my motion to approve changing the language that Amy suggested for goal number 5.
Who's second?
I seconded.
That was your second?
I think staff has already worked on these, and I guess it's not a big change, but I would like to see us approve them,
So we have a motion to approve and amend it, fostered to leadership.
Provide leadership.
Provide leadership. And a second to approve.
Was Trustee Iverson, were you seconding Jennifer's amendment?
I seconded her original amendment. I don't second the amended. I think they're good, and I'd like to move forward with them. And
okay, well, I'll second Jennifer's motion to accept the goals with the change to number 5.
We had so then that's a new motion.
No.
So that's a new motion. So it has to, because then that motion fails because he didn't second. There's no he didn't come back and second that.
No, that's not how it works.
Yes.
So he seconded the original motion, correct?
Right.
She moved to amend the motion. I'm seconding her amended motion.
But you have to vote on the first motion.
No, you don't. That one goes first. The amended motion gets voted on first, and if that fails, it goes back to the original motion.
So
it's how we vote.
Yes,
it's Robert's rules.
We had a parliamentary procedure training just recently. To my understanding, I think Graf could comment as well. When there's a motion on the table and then there's an amendment added, you would vote on the amendment first, and then if the amendment fails, you go back to the original motion.
Exactly. So I second Jennifer's amended motion.
So the amendment failed.
When was there wasn't even, I didn't hear a motion for the amendment.
She moved to amend. He originally seconded, and he said no, he was not going to second it.
I'd move to amend it again, and I would second that.
Okay.
If I missed that.
Okay.
If we can go back to.
So now we move, so Jennifer moves to amend, Amy seconds the amendment, correct? Okay.
Yeah, I want to be real clear because this feels like 2 hours of reviewing the minutes next year.
Exactly.
You know, so.
So who made the original motion to
Jennifer.
approve?
Trustee Baker made the original motion. I seconded it.
Okay, and then she
wanted
amended
to
her
amend
motion.
the motion.
And I second it. Okay.
So call the question on the amended
What
motion.
is the amended motion now?
Would be to accept the goals with the change of language and goal number 5 from foster a climate to provide
leadership, right?
And my comment on that, so to open that amendment to discussion, is that I think that foster a climate keeps it consistent with the rest of the goals. Leadership kind of changes the, I think, the direction. So,
I don't think there's any consistency. They're all a little different. That's the only one that's repeated. So 2 are repeated twice, that one's repeated twice, and one's different. I don't think that should be a factor, but to me,
so we've already.
I just think it makes more sense.
So Trustee Martinson, we've already gotten your opinion on that. So let's either, any other discussion on the amendment, or we vote on the amendment? Okay. So we have a motion on the amendment from Trustee Baker, a second on the amendment for Trustee Martinson.
Amended.
Amended. And
I've opened online voting for
Okay.
the motion to amend.
all right.
I vote deny. Just.
What do you vote?
Aye.
Trustee Martinson, I don't have your vote.
It didn't come up for me.
And how would you like to vote?
Oh, okay. Sorry. So is that the way it's going to go down, the motion? Because we need to capture the text of the motion.
Can you see what is written, approve the new two?
Yeah, it says with Martinson changes.
Yes,
That's-
so I could type that in later, I just.
So you will change that later? Okay.
Okay. I don't know if this counts for me. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have a tie, 4-4.
No, the
Possible?
student is an advisory vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the motion fails with 4 no votes and 3 yes votes.
All right, so now we vote on the original.
Yes.
On the original motion, on the original goals. And that was moved by Baker and second by Iverson.
Online voting is open. Do you wish to vote?
Do you get it automatically?
I didn't see yours. I can't see yours.
You can't see it anymore?
No.
Aye.
Okay. The motion carries with a unanimous vote.
Thank you. All right, we move to 14.10, and it's board consideration of the presence of legal counsel at the board meeting. I have one speaker on this topic, and that is James Hinton.
I think it's important James Hinton, 3574 Hunter Circle, Napa, California. I think it's important to have legal counsel at these meetings. A lot of you are very underpaid and appreciated for your service on these boards. It takes a lot of time, and not just to get elected and to get up there, but to actually go through these agendas and all that all the time. And it'd be nice if you had access to the attorney when you need it, and so we can avoid stuff like just a few minutes ago, not even sure of the Roberts Rules procedure and stuff like that. It's great. Would be great to have legal counsel at all the board meetings.
Thank you. Okay, so I just want to recap a couple of things from previous discussion that we had, and that was that Trustee Rios, when he was board chair and we had this discussion, he did a little bit of research, what was necessary to figure out what it would take, and we were looking at $340 per hour and what that would include, and that was a lesser rate for someone who was semi-retired, lived in Napa, and that would include, of course, pre-meeting cost. It's not just looking at what it would cost during our meetings and the length of our meetings. They would be reviewing agendas, preparing themselves. There would be the cost during the meeting, and then the cost after the meeting for any research on any topic. In my conversations with counsel, one of the things that I think that I learned is that there would not really be much change in the way that we do business. And the reason is because an attorney is most likely not going to give a decision on the spot. They're going to say, I'll check that out. And so we're back to where we are, which is now if a subject comes up and we feel we need more information on it, we consult our counsel and come back with the answers. So I'm not seeing how that would it would cost us a lot of money, and I really don't think it would give us that great of a additional benefit.
May I add to that, which was one of the pieces, the second piece to that discussion? I mean, we had that discussion, and then the second piece was to determine whether council was willing to or able to provide service on kind of a trial basis. And I think that's the part that got lost in the discussions afterwards. But just to be clear, that counsel is part of the district's attorney. That counsel you were describing, she is a member of the firm. And yes, they would provide service on a trial basis if that's what the board wanted to do. That was just the last piece of information that wasn't clearly reported back at the time.
Okay, thank you. So we'll do a motion in a second, and then we can open it up to any further discussion.
So I move that we have our attorney present at our board meetings on a trial basis of 3 months.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Martinson to provide the presence of a legal counsel at board meetings, and a second by... For 3 months. And a second by student trustee Sandhu. Discussion.
So approximately what would the cost be for those 3 months? Approximately. I mean, a rough estimate.
It depends on what issues would come up. I mean, if you think of, I don't know what the average of our meetings are, 4 hours, times that times 340 an hour, add maybe an hour before for them to prep, look at the agenda, And then if we have questions, they have to go back and research it. It's hard to say.
So plus travel time.
She lives in Napa.
Could we clarify, would any after meeting research, that wouldn't be an addition because we already do that, correct?
No.
I mean,
That would be additional.
It's hourly fee. All
the
time
what
spent.
you're saying is that we would pay this individual to be here for the meeting, and then if something came up, then they would be researching it after. My hope would be that even if we did not have someone here, if a question came up that required research, that we would take advantage of our attorney, regardless of whether they were here in the room during the meeting. Is that not correct?
We pay our attorneys on an hourly basis.
Yes.
Right. So any work they do, whether they're here or it's research outside of our meetings or any type of meeting, is charged on an hourly basis.
Yes, but what you implied, maybe I misunderstood, but what you implied, what I heard, was that by having that individual here, that would increase the amount of time that they would be doing research outside of the meeting. That is not what you're saying.
It just means that would
Then I
be
apologize, I misunderstood.
additional. So in other words, if we're sitting in the meeting and they're sitting in the meeting, the whole time they're sitting here, right, they're running up, they're billing.
Yes.
And so that's the piece that would be in addition, where right now we're paying an attorney when we need them to look up something that came up, either during a meeting or outside of a meeting, to help us make decisions.
But we would not anticipate that by having that individual here, that would increase the amount of research that they would do outside of it.
They would still have to do research.
Well, yeah,
We're
but that doesn't
paying them
change
for
it.
the time that they're here, plus the research.
Right. But
If an issue comes up and we need legal, they're going to research it anyway.
Right.
We could be saving the money that we're paying them sitting here.
Mm-hmm.
So the additional cost based on what Raphael just said would be the hour before to prepare for the meeting, the 4 hours during, which would be, let's see, so that would be $1,700 per meeting, potentially, and then whatever, you can't, I see what Jennifer Baker is saying, is that you can't add the stuff after, because we would be doing that anyway if the issues came up, whether they were here or not. That's what she's trying to say.
Right.
So it's the hour before
That's what we're
and the 4
trying to
hours,
say, yes.
which is $1,700
Right.
approximately.
And my point is, if they have to leave the meeting and do research, that's not bringing us any value over what we already have. So, hold on. Iverson.
I think we've exhausted this topic. We've talked
That's
about it.
why we're bringing it
I
up
know,
today.
and now it's on agenda. I think we just vote on moving forward with it or not, regardless of a trial period.
Mm-hmm.
So.
May I make one more comment? Just I understand that having the attorney here, that you're not necessarily going to get legal advice during the meeting. However, in my experience from having served on boards where we did have an attorney present at all times, that wasn't always the case. That oftentimes they could offer, at the very least, corrections, things like that. And then there's also the potential that something would come up that they might see, you know what, perhaps the board would benefit from having a legal opinion on this, where we might not even think to ask.
Could we send the agenda every time to our council to review it? And if they think they need to be present at the meeting, then the chair and council can discuss it, then they could come for that specific meeting. So going forward, every agenda is sent to them, and if they think a legal question could arise from that item, then
That's a good question.
Could that be
I don't know
another
the
way to
answer
do
to
it?
that, but that's
instead
potential.
of just having them come every time that
Yeah,
they,
that's
if they think they
potentially,
should be here.
Mhm, mhm.
And I'm thinking that, we're spending $1,700, approximately $1,700 a meeting. We're here to serve the students, and I know that those attorneys that we have help us do that already. Any legal item that comes up, correct me if I'm wrong, we have attorneys to ask and to turn to. At the last meeting, we had a number of students that came up and said we need help with paying for textbooks. I mean, no, there's Mr. Parker. I don't know. I don't know how, what the situation it's like. You know, I would rather spend the money on the students and their education, their books, and that's where I would rather see the money go to.
Michael, I don't think I've heard from you yet.
Somewhere on this value statement, it says professional development, and I can see that how it loosely ties. I hesitate to spend the money, but I mean, we've benefited by the Robert's rules, kind of, all right, let's observe and see where we could be more effective in our duties as trustees in the public arena, in the meeting. That might be a benefit, but just to say we're going to do it from here forward, I'm a little apprehensive about committing to that sort of dollar amount. We have a attorney present. I know he's not an attorney. He's shaking his head, but he's thoughtful and he's.
I'm not the board's attorney.
No, I realize that. But anytime you open your mouth, you speak with the training of.
We've had a robust discussion.
Yes.
Before today, and I would suggest, we've had robust. Take the vote.
Excuse me, I haven't spoken. This is my item, so I would like to be able to have my opportunity to speak on the item, please. Is that okay? Because I haven't spoke on the item. It's my item. So can I wrote a statement. I would like to read it.
Yeah,
no, I didn't.
You did.
I
You
answered the question regarding the money. We were clarifying money amounts. I haven't been able to say why I think this is important, and I would like to have an opportunity. So if everybody else is done, I'd like to read the statement that I wrote for this item. Is everybody else finished?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, I think having an attorney present on a part-time basis for 3 months would allow us to actually establish the cost benefit, which Trustee Baldini spoke at the last meeting when we talked about this. We said at our board retreat that making our board more effective was a priority, and having our attorney present would make our board meetings more effective, as questions would be answered in a more timely manner, and we would not spend time arguing about legal points, improving board relations. In addition, it would provide insurance for the board and college, as our attorney would have a pulse on the kind of legal questions coming up in our meetings from board members and the community. Our attorney would know if we're going off track at times when maybe we don't even know there's an issue. And lastly, it would elevate the board and give the board more legitimacy, cultivating trust with the college and community. I did contact Santa Rosa JC, and they said their attorney is present at most of their board meetings. They did add that they usually don't speak at the time. They address issues that came up after the meeting, but they are there at most of their meetings. And just some of the things that maybe could have been warded off that came at our meetings that were legal issues that I think it would have been good for our attorney to have a pulse on. The OCR complaints and issues of student accommodations and retaliation, the sale of the Menlo property, Brown Act issues, the question of videotaping our meetings and closed captioning, the question of board members posting on Facebook, the question of whether or not board members can determine the content of other board members' board reports through board policy, and the president's son being on the personnel document. So those are just a few examples of items that our attorney could have intervened early, rather than things escalating to the point where we had to have a lot of conflict and waste a lot of time and a lot of arguing.
Okay, so let's just vote. Let's just vote.
I have a problem with the vote.
Okay.
I discovered why Trustee Sandhu's name isn't appearing. It's because when we opened roll call, he wasn't present. And so that's why, so at this time, I'm unable to mark him as a second, making a second of a motion.
Okay.
So
we just need somebody else to second.
I can fix it later, in the office.
Yeah.
So I could just choose any name and then fix that?
No, we need to definitely have somebody. So we've got a first was Baker? No, Martinson. And so we need a second.
I'll second.
Baker, second.
Thank you.
So Martinson first, or moved, and Baker second.
Point of information. Just because you can't get it in the system does that just take away my ability to second now?
I guess so, unless,
I
like
don't
I
need
said.
I don't need to be here for the roll call for closed session. There's no reason for me to actually be here, so.
No, it's just the software system. So if it didn't capture you when we took roll call, then that's why all your subsequent votes haven't shown up, but they've all been yes and unanimous.
Except one. I did vote yes.
And that one I'm going to note it in the minutes. So this is a convenience. It's not an official record. The official record comes out of my fingertips. So this is a convenience to make it really easy for me.
Trustee Sandhu, if you'd like for your second to stand, we can do it manually.
Yeah, I would.
You would?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll do this vote manually then. Okay? So we have, let me go back to first Martinson and a second by Trustee Sandhu. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Let's look at hands.
Yeah, it's going to be easier. Three.
And opposed, there's 3.
Okay, so
Motion fails.
I had 4.
Sandhu is the
Was in
advisory
favor.
vote.
Was
Right.
that not in favor?
It's an advisory vote.
Okay. And I had 3 no votes.
Right.
So that's
4 no votes.
Sorry.
And will we be recording from now on all the votes? Because didn't happen at the last minute.
4 no votes.
Was yours too? I
Mancuso,
didn't capture it.
Iverson, Segura, and Rios.
So in the minutes, both the yay and the nays will be recorded.
Okay. So, motion fails. Do I read all 4 names out?
Pardon me?
You don't
I
have to
read
do
all
that
the
now,
names?
as long as you got them, and that's
I've got them.
that's
The
the
motion
question, so you feel
fails.
comfortable?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Okay. So moving on to the next, we have appointments for trustee members to District Auxiliary Services. And I would like to appoint for consistency, continuity, I would like to appoint Trustee Segura.
Thank you very much.
And this is an action item, so I would like a motion.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Baldini moves, and Iverson second.
Okay. Online voting is open.
And Manveer, you'll have to do yours verbally, correct?
Aye.
Thank you.
Earlier, somehow, it would just say yes automatically. I don't know how. It was just voting me yes. We just stopped doing that now.
Next is appointment of trustee member to the VWT Board.
Excuse me, I don't
Oh,
have
I'm sorry.
complete votes. I'm sorry. Baldini and
Iverson?
No, she's looking
There
for
we
votes
go.
now.
Oh,
Yeah, they're coming up.
sorry, slow down. Slow down.
Yeah, you're trying to get out of here at 9. It's like,
Yeah.
Okay, motion carries. Unanimous vote.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so appointment of trustee member to Viticulture and Winery Technology Foundation Board of Directors. I'd like to appoint trustee Baldini. Can I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
We have Rios moves and Sandhu second.
Thank you.
Hang on. Rios and Sandhu, here we go. Take the vote. Okay, we're opening online voting.
Aye.
There we go. Motion carries with unanimous votes.
All
Thank you very
right.
much.
Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And as we know, 14.13 has been pulled. And so we move to appoint trustee members to board committees. I had a lot of fun doing this, actually. Spent a lot of time with it. And kind of, used my little whiteboard and moved people around and erased and thought about it. I did, so this wasn't random. I'll just tell you that. There was a method to my madness.
Real quickly, there's an error in here from the appointees from the last year. I was the one that was on the McPherson committee.
That is an error.
Not Amy.
Mm-hmm.
Can I point out another one?
Uh-huh.
I was appointed to the Legislative Affairs Committee.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you get the?
I'm sorry, I did not. I can't see who's speaking.
I was pointing out on number 3 from last year's appointees. It has Trustee Martinson as being the appointee to the McPherson Award, and it was actually
Baker.
Baker.
And then Sandhu needs to be added to the Legislative Affairs Committee.
Okay.
All right. Drum roll.
218.
Everybody's like, oh, jeez. Just get on with it, right?
Yeah.
I know. Okay, so Legislative Affairs. I have Mancuso, Iverson, Baker, and Sandhu. Do all of you accept?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we can move on to that one. And Audit and Finance, I have Martinson, Rios, Segura, and Martinson as chair of that committee. Oh, and I forgot to mention Mancuso as chair of Legislative. So Martinson, Rios, Segura on Audit and Finance. Do you accept?
Yes.
Yes.
No. I would like to be added to that committee if possible.
Okay. I don't see any reason not to, so that's a good learning experience for our student trustee. And then McPherson, Trustee Baker, would you take that on again?
Sure. Yes.
Thank you. So that completes the standing committees. And then on the ad hoc real property, we have Baldini, Rios, and Iverson. I'd like to keep it Baldini, Rios, and Iverson with Baldini chair.
I accept.
Rios and Iverson?
Yes.
Okay. And then my feeling is that I think that with the meeting management committee, ad hoc committee, we accomplished what we needed to for now. If there's any, we can always revisit that committee, bring it back to life if necessary. Any comments or anything on that?
I was just going to say that we probably all of us have occasional ideas for things that could be improved, and we've done a lot in the last year. So I think that moving forward, unless something big came along, we could just talk to the chair, say, here's an idea.
Okay.
Now it's yours.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think it's fine to get rid of that committee, but I still, finishing up with that committee, would like to see the final texts of the AR since they do relate to our board meetings. I think that we need to see the final language.
I think we received you sent them out to all of us for feedback? Yep. And did you get that feedback?
Only from one trustee. So if there's further feedback, we can incorporate
So let's
it.
put a date on that. Any feedback for the ARs, and maybe resend it again.
Okay.
And let's put a date of, from the time you send it out, why don't we say 2 hours?
Okay.
And would you be sending all of them out again?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes committees. Thank you. And now we need move on to committee reports. So the ad hoc committee reports, I think we can just real quickly, since we just discussed it, we know that we're ending this committee meeting management, and we're going to put out those final documents for everybody's input, and we can wrap that up. Okay, so then Real Property Asset Management Committee, anything to report?
No, there's no meeting.
Okay. And then standing committees. DAS Committee, Segura. Our DAS.
The DAS?
Board of Directors appointee.
We met on the 12th. Couldn't do much with the budget because it wasn't ready yet, so you got to see it tonight. We did approve the quarterly financial reports. The master agreement is at legal. We didn't do anything with that. Napa Silverado, with the Silverados agreement, it's back to, it's still at legal. We have 3 issues that we need to resolve, which have to do with expenses and who would be responsible for what. So you'll get to hear about it next board meeting.
Thank you. Is that everything?
That's everything.
Okay. VWT Foundation or Viticulture and Winery Foundation Board of Directors, who would have a report on that? Okay. All right. And then Mr. Iverson, Chair of the Legislative Affairs Committee.
We did finally meet. We bounced our calendar around quite a bit, but we did meet. We did discuss where the bills that we had in the past all assigned. We assigned bills and looked at them. We did go over an oil severance tax resolution proposal, but we decided at this point to hold off, and we did kind of agree amongst ourselves that we would forward things that we were working on to the next legislative committee, just as an idea.
Are there minutes available from those meetings to review?
Should be, yes.
And the resolution was uploaded as part of that meeting, so it's online.
There are notes for those meetings. We don't do formal minutes for those meetings, but I do have notes.
Where are they?
I haven't been instructed yet as to what to do with them, but they're prepared.
Oh, good.
They're going to be put online, correct?
No, I mean, that's a big, good Carol Lee question. I don't know what we've done in the past if we post them, but we'll figure that out. And it sounds like if you're taking notes and we're uploading items, it's simple to make those available to the public.
We talked about that. We talked about the standing committees, which are not that many, that because they are public, and that we thought that they should be treated pretty much the same.
We even discussed wondering why they're not being videotaped, for example, but for sure minutes, the public should know what came out of those meetings.
Yeah, so those standing committees we feel should have that same treatment. Okay, thank you, Trustee Iverson. Audit Committee, we met. You saw the results. So it was great. I love it. I'm not going to be on the Audit Committee anymore, but I have enjoyed being on that committee. It's such a great for anybody that gets to be on it. The insight and what you learn is really, I think, very, very much worth it. And then McPherson, nothing at this point, right? Okay, so those are the committee reports. trustee and board chair reports. So let's start with Martinson.
Let's see. Yeah, just I attended the legislative subcommittee meeting as well as the audit committee meeting. That's it.
All right. Trustee Reyes.
No report.
Jeez. Trustee Segura.
Nada.
No report. Okay. Trustee Iverson.
No report.
Trustee Sandu.
No report.
Other than you went to Hawaii and all that.
I can't talk about that, but
I know.
Wouldn't.
I know.
Incoming ballistic missile was quite the way to wake up on 8 a.m.
Trustee Baldini.
I do have a report. I'll make it very brief. I enjoyed Flex Day. There's other presentations as far as how it was done, and yes. Anyway, thank you. Just for your office.
And Trustee Baker. Is that?
That's it. Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Didn't we have a police academy graduation?
No, that was last year.
Well, it was last year, but it's been.
But it was it was since our last meeting.
Yes, that's right. I was enabled to enjoy that one. Again, if you haven't gone, it was just absolutely wonderful. And Director Sandoval, how he roasts, quote unquote, or certainly introduces us to every student, candidate, graduate in the program is just enlightening, and it's the connection there with the families and why they're there and how they've been transformed it's remarkable. It's a remarkable experience. And then the only observation I had is that those that haven't have interviewed and have successfully graduated, they're there to be penned by the supporting agency. But those that haven't, I'd like their term to be, or how they're referred to as graduates, because they did graduate the program rather than a student. But it's just a wonderful program. So when is the June graduation, or the next graduation, would be my question. Since we got the May 24th for...
It's right in there.
Oh, that concludes I'll take my...
Okay.
My answer off mic there.
Okay. Trustee Baker?
I unfortunately missed the police academy graduation. It was on my calendar, and as was about 50 billion other things that week, and I just completely forgot. So very upset that I missed that. But to go to the Audit and Finance Committee meeting, and although I don't get to be a part of VP Shear's report since it's community education, as of next Tuesday I will be a student of Napa Valley College. My son and I are going to be taking a dance class together.
Oh, fun.
Sorry.
I attended the Police Academy graduation. As Michael said, it's a great experience. And Legislative Affairs Committee, an Audit Committee, Flex Day. I felt like I was here for a while there. It was like every single day I was coming to Napa Valley College. Flex Day was great. As I said earlier, Ken surprised me with his sort of stand-up routine. I didn't realize he was like that. And Amanda, of course, gave a really good speech, a really good talk. And I thought it was should have been very moving to the whole crowd. And Ron spoke, and Rebecca, who else? Oh, Paul Wagner. Mm-hmm. I thought that was good, didn't you?
Yes.
Oh, I thought that was great. I'd like to do his little, 2 glasses of wine and anytime. So that's what I did since our last board meeting. And with that,
Chair, could I add something off the record?
you can add it on the record.
It's on the record.
All right.
Because I haven't adjourned yet.
I have enlisted into the Marine Corps, and over the summer I plan to go to boot camp and join the reserves, and the following summer to go into platoon leadership course to
Wow.
become an officer.
That's huge. That is huge. That's amazing. Congratulations. That is a big decision. So, seeing no reason to go back into closed session.
About future agenda items.
What do I miss? Oh, I'm so sorry.
And isn't that supposed to be before board reports?
I thought it was supposed to be between standing and board, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So
The
Kathy.
future agenda items?
Uh-huh.
We can certainly change it.
It's for future.
Change it. So where would you like in the future? I'm sorry.
Really, that's kind of.
So if we could put the future agenda items between, right after standing committees.
What? You got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Amanda.
You can't leave yet. We're not.
Almost
Yes.
there.
Where you go?
Future agenda items, we have campus housing right now, website compliance, anything else?
Well, I'll send it in writing because it's our policy, but I'll just say I want to, for next time, since we're talking about saving money for students, to have the audio recording of our meetings put on the agenda because we're still paying $200 a month, which is $2,400 a year to audio record when we have video recordings now on our own website. So that took a board action to create it, so it's going to take a board action to end that. So I would like that to be on the next agenda.
Okay.
Can I, so I can let her go? Can you please put me on your mailing list? I didn't know about Flex Day, or else I would have been there. Or somebody put me on.
That's just all staff, right?
I don't think I get anything that goes to all
I
staff.
didn't get that one either, but my email is not working.
Nor did I.
Yeah.
I think if they don't,
That's weird.
Yeah.
you don't want people riding by.
We will direct staff to figure out what that issue might be. And so now, if we're not seeing any reason to go back into closed session, and I don't see any objection to adjourn the meeting, meeting is adjourned.